Welcome to the Town of Sherborn Select Board meeting. It is 6:30. We're going to begin the meeting. We're going to open up into an executive session and then go immediately after that, or at 7:30, we'll go into the open session, which I think will be soon thereafter. And also, it is November 21st, 2024. I'm going to ask the Assistant Town Administrator, Diane, to please read the executive session agenda.
Good evening. Item number 1 is meeting with town council in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, 449 Mass 444, 2007, to discuss 31 Hunting Lane, 41 North Main Street, Igor Labasi et al. Versus the town of Sherborn, Land Court number 21, MISC PS 000193, HPS and 31 Hunting Lane LLC versus Sherborn Board of Appeals, Housing Appeals Committee number 2021-05 and 41 North Main LLC versus Sherborn Board of Appeals, Housing Appeals Committee number 2021-06, and pursuant to General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A and 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, specifically the Public Records Law, General Law, Chapter 4, Section 726, to discuss privileged communications from town council regarding litigation. Item number 2 is meeting with town council pursuant to General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, 449 Mass 444, 2007, to discuss potential litigation and pursuant to General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, specifically the Public Records Law, General Law, Chapter 40, Section 726, to discuss privileged written communication from town council and potential litigation regarding former health administrator. Item number 3 is meeting with town council pursuant to General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, and Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, 449 Mass 444, 2007, discuss potential litigation, and pursuant to General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A and 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any in general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, specifically the Public Records Law, General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, parentheses 26, to discuss privileged written communication from town council and potential litigation regarding claims of Robert Murchison.
Thank you very much, Diane. As chair, I declare that an executive session warranted for the aforementioned agenda items, and I move that we move into executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, Stephen?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Marion?
Aye.
And Paul?
Aye.
And I might as well. All right, please turn off the recording, and can people, either Diane or Jeremy, put the appropriate people in the waiting room and leave the appropriate people here? This is the November 21st, 2024 Sherborn Select Board meeting. It is 7:38. We just exited executive session and now begin open session. The beginning of open session, I would like to please ask the Assistant Town Administrator to please read the open session agenda. You're muted.
Good evening. After I get through reading the agenda, the select board can vote to amend or approve the agenda. I've had no request for public comment for tonight. Items may be taken out of order and topics not anticipated 48 hours in advance may be added. Item number 1 is the designation of a health agent position as a special municipal employee under General Law, Chapter 268A. Heather White, our town council, and Jeremy Marsapp will be here to discuss that. Item number 2 is the consideration of acceptance of a municipal road safety grant. Chief Tom Galvin will be here. Item number 3 is consideration of a water commissioner appointments. Bob Murchison for a term to be determined by the select board. Meredith Wasilowski for a term to be determined by the select board. And Taylor Rycroft for a term to be determined by the select board. Item number 4 was the presentation of the 2024 pavement management report. Frank Macchiato will be here, Sean Colleen and Jeremy Musset will discuss that. Item number 5 is the discussion regarding the Sherborn Veteran Services Officer. Jeremy Musset will discuss that item. Item number 6 is the consent agenda, which is the payroll warrant, draft minutes of September 19th and October 3rd. Consideration of a one-day liquor license for Pauline Bounds for 2 private events at the community center. Item number 7 is select board updates. Item number 8 is the town administrator updates, the Sherborn 350 time capsule submission, Green Communities annual report, the MVP 2.0 grant application, the sustainability coordinator and director of assessing. Item number 9 is consideration of Phoenix Partners settlement proposal. Marion Neutral will speak on that.
Very good. Do I have any motions relative to the agenda?
Move approval.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor, Stephen?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Marion?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I am as well. Okay, first thing up, a designation of health agent position as a special municipal employee. Was that, is Heather or Jeremy going to open up with that?
Yeah, so this is a request for the select board to add the position of health agent to your list of special municipal employee designations. In your packet is a memo prepared by Heather White of Town Council, and I'll let her expand on the memo.
Thank you, Heather White from Town Council's office. As Jeremy mentioned, there's an item for the board to consider designating the health agent position as a special municipal employee. This arises because the Board of Health is in the process of engaging one or more individuals to supplement the services of the current health agent, but only for specific projects. And at least one individual that's being considered currently represents applicants before the Board of Health. There is, and that would present an issue under the conflict of interest law in order for that individual to do both, representing the private individuals and also working with the board on projects that he is not involved in a private capacity. So in order to obtain an exemption, the position of health agent would need to be designated as a special municipal employee. That designation is up to the select board. So it is your decision whether to vote to designate the position as a special. If you do so vote, the position as a whole would obtain the designation. So anyone who is a health agent for the Board of Health would be entitled to that special municipal employee designation. And the particular individual who this issue is related to would be allowed to continue to provide services for other applicants as well as the Board of Health, as long as he's not doing it, providing services to both the private party and the town on the same application. And as long as he doesn't provide services to the Board of Health for more than 60 days in a year. And that exemption would be automatic if the board designates the position as a special municipal employee. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Looks like Paul has a question.
Well, actually, I have a position that's a little different. First, I mean, this is an issue that had been discussed by a prior board, and we had opinions from prior town council on this. There are unintended consequences with this vote. Unintended consequences, particularly for the existing health agent. And this, without getting into the details of all of that and those consequences, it was felt not to be a wise move for the community. So based on that, A, I recommend against it, and B, I will be voting no.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Well, let me try to raise my hand here. I guess I don't know how much Paul can elaborate, but without understanding your reasoning, I'm not sure how to vote, I guess I would say. In other words, there may be things that those unintended consequences are not something I can visualize concretely to be able to vote effectively.
I'll be
I
honest.
agree with Jeff.
I intend to vote for this. I believe it actually is kind of a belt and suspenders. It's kind of conservative move. I mean, I was here for a few years with a previous town council, might be the same one, and we've reaping those bad opinions for years. So I would actually support this town council, support this opinion, and particularly for the individual here who's really just going to do like one or two, like just a couple field observations or whatever it is. I um I intend to vote for this. I just think that unless Paul wants to elaborate on what he thinks harm, but like I said, with previous council, we're still reaping some of the bad decisions on previous council. Yeah, Marianne?
Oh, right. I mean, it's not explained in great detail in this motion, but I think the purpose is to give the Board of Health some flexibility as to the personnel they use when work needs to be done. Is that the case?
Yes.
Yeah,
That is, they're bringing in basically an ad hoc worker to help with issues that the Board of Health needs done in the field and agents' work. Is that correct?
That's right. Only for one or two specific projects.
But
And
could I,
to elaborate, it's a short-term requirement. The individual that is looking to assist the Board of Health has one project to complete before the Board of Health. It's in the final stages of submitting an as-built plan. That's the only reason why this designation is being proposed. Once that's cleaned up, once he's completed that project, the individual will have no more pending work with the town of Sherborn.
so if I could just
Okay,
add
Paul, yeah, I'll
something?
recognize you.
The,
Go ahead, Paul.
the thing that maybe I didn't emphasize enough is that this designation, while it applies to this extra employee for a little while, it's permanent until we vote it down. And it specifically applies to the existing health agent. And it is in its application to the existing health agent that there are some scenarios that are unintended that are not good to change that employee's relationship with the town that way. So the objection I have and the objection that the prior council had is nothing to do with the extra person. It has to do with the fact that this vote applies to the person who we're trying to provide a supplemental worker to. I don't want to mention any names. It's hard to.
Oh, that helped. Oh, that helped.
Mhm.
Particularly where
All right.
there may be some I'm trying to think of a word, further procedures ongoing. This is absolutely the worst time to make a change in somebody's job description and job in the context of other further procedures.
So let me clarify here something a second. I'll recognize a minute, Sean. Let me clarify something. This is a Paul Saunier, correct?
That's the temporary guy, yeah.
That's correct. He would be the temporary help for 3 projects. He currently has a project that he has completed, it's been constructed, that he's submitted as-built on to the Board of Health. The as-built are
Okay.
just being accepted by the Board of Health now.
Yeah, so I know the back
That's
end. I have no
the hook
problem with
with
this at all.
him having worked before the town of Sherborn.
Yeah, okay. I know, because he's winding up and he's got one thing left. And it's making sense. I kind of don't. I think this needs to happen, and I think it's safe. And I mean, I intend, to vote for it. Um, I will also say, it's going to be a couple projects, and I somehow suspect we're making a mountain out of a hill here. I'll just go on the board. I'll recognize Marion and then Sean. Marianne, you first.
Right, I've read and reread this memorandum, and I'm still not clearly understanding from it if this special municipal employee designation applies only to this supplemental help that the Board of Health is requesting, or does it also apply to the existing health agent?
Maybe Heather, you can answer that.
Yes, thank you. So yes, the special municipal employee designation would apply to everyone who holds that position. So that includes the current health agent and any additional individuals. I would also just add though, if the position is designated as special municipal employee, nearly all of the exemptions that would apply to that designation require a further approval of the board before they would be entitled to the exemption. And the current health agent would not be entitled to this exemption that we are particularly aiming towards with the proposed vote tonight, because he works more than 60 days in a calendar year. So he would not be allowed to represent individuals before the Board of Health in a private capacity and receive compensation from those individuals. But the additional employee who would only be working on one or two projects on a very limited basis would automatically obtain that exemption without any further vote of the board.
Okay, I think that puts off a lot of the concerns, to be honest with you. I'm satisfied. Is there any discussion or any motions relative to this?
Yeah, I would make a motion, that helped me also. I would make the motion to approve of the designation of a health agent position as a special municipal employee under General Law 268A.
Boyle. Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor, Stephen,
Aye.
Jeff,
All right,
Marianne,
Aye.
Paul,
Nay.
and I am mine. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's see. Moving on here, we have number three, actually. Number two, consider the acceptance of municipal road safety grant. Chief Galvin.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've been in front of you guys, so it's good to see everybody. So we have been awarded $11,680.96 as part of the FY25 Municipal Road Safety Program. Lieutenant Ted Stone did a lot of work on an application to receive this funding. And what this funding will allow is for us to assign officers 4-hour shifts for traffic enforcement during 6 different traffic safety campaigns between December and August. So they have 2 impaired driving campaigns that focus on drunk driving, 2 speed campaigns. One is the classic click it or ticket, which you've probably all heard over the years, which focuses on seatbelts, and then one distracted driving campaign, which is really has a push on handheld device use. So what I'm asking is that the board accept that grant and allow us to participate in those campaigns.
So,
Paul, do you have a motion?
so moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor? Stephen?
I'm gonna vote aye, but I wanted to just ask one question
Yeah,
of
no.
Chief Galvin.
Let me do it. We have a motion and a second. It's good time for questions. I'm sorry I did not push the discussion. Yeah, please
Yeah,
go
that's
ahead.
all right. No, my only question is about the line that says during the enforcement blocks, officers are required to complete 3 documented motor vehicle stops per hour. That, I don't know. To me, that just seems like a lot for the town of Sherborn. Like, do you really anticipate that our officers are going to be able to make legitimately three stops per hour?
Yeah, we generally schedule them down during times where we're going to see more traffic. The only ones where sometimes we have difficulty are on some of the impaired driving ones we will schedule late at night. But as long as we're able to justify why that standard was not met, the state does not have an issue with that. It just creates some extra paperwork for us.
Okay, great, thank you. And again, I vote aye.
Okay. And is there any more discussion? Again, I apologize for just going straight to a vote on this. Is there any more discussion? All right. Stephen voted aye. Jeff, how do you vote?
Aye.
Marion?
Aye.
Paul?
Always want to accept money. Aye.
Absolutely. I am aye as well. Thank you very much, Chief.
All right, thank you.
See you soon. All right. Okay, moving on. We have here consideration of water commissioner appointments. 3 listed there: Bob Murchison, Meredith Weslowski, and Tyler Rycroft. Now, is there any discussion before? What I'm going to do is if you're an applicant here and you'd like to make a statement, I ask you please raise your virtual hand with the raise hand feature. I'll simply take people in the order of what your hands are raised. And before we actually do it, is there any discussion here? I want to wait till we hear from the applicants and then
Couple of things.
Jeff hand raised.
Well, I just, they're all three say a term date to be determined by the select board, and I don't sure how we determine that. Usually, isn't there a standard term for a water commissioner?
So there's two positions with 2 open terms. Unfortunately, no one applied for a specific thing, and I don't know how it was advertised. So we decided to kind of at the meeting itself, we'll simply like either assign it or see what they want to do. Do you know what I mean? But open positions with 2 different terms, and
So
we'll just basically.
we're picking 2 candidates then out of the 3. Is that
Yes.
what we're doing?
Mhm.
I should have clarified that. There's 2 open positions with 3 candidates.
Okay, I didn't understand that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Paul, you had something.
Yeah, I was actually going to speak on the subject that Jeff was asking about. There's a term, I think, 2025, and there's a term 2026. So as part of the process, when we make an appointment, we need to decide, do we want to appoint that person to the 2 years to go or the 1 year to go, basically.
And a term will take them to the election. So presumably at the 2025, that position will at open ballot, before caucus and then the election itself.
And the other thing I would add is that we've agreed that the surviving member of the Water Commission shall also be voting with us, so that the statute for replacing elected officials who have vacancies on boards that are elected is that the surviving members of both boards vote as a committee of the whole, and you need a majority vote of that. So if there is 5 of us voting, and I believe 1 water commission, that makes 6 voters on this subject matter. And to be elected, you need a majority of that 6. 3 is not a majority. It has to be 4 votes in order to fill the vacancy for the positions.
Unfortunately, Frank is here, and Frank, you're the swing vote if there's a split. Stephen, do you have a question, comment?
Yeah, one question again about the terms, because I guess one of them expires May 2025 anyways, and then the other one expires May 2026. But when the people that we appoint, both of their terms will technically expire at the May 2025 election. Is that right?
I'm not sure. One might be
No.
25, 26.
No.
It's 3-year terms, 3 people, so everyone has their own unique election. I
One
believe.
expires this May, the other one expires a year from this May.
Yeah.
That's right. They
Okay,
fulfill
because
term
the
of the previous.
in the document in the packet it says both vacancies will be on the May 2025 annual town election ballot. So is that incorrect?
No, I'm sorry, Stephen. That's what, That's what the town clerk told me, that both positions will be on the ballot for May
Right.
2025. One will be to take her to the 2026, and the other will be for 3 years.
Right. So when we appoint somebody tonight to Tara Horahan's term, that person doesn't automatically serve all the way until 2026, right? That
Oh.
person needs to be reelected at the town election.
It goes
Yes.
to the next election. The next election is going to be
Right.
May of
2025, right? So now the person that we appoint to that position, are they restricted in the May 2025 election to only run for that seat?
no.
No, right. So effectively, regardless of who we appoint tonight, they're both actually expiring May 2025, and both need to run for re-election, and they are not restricted as to which of those two seats they can run for.
Correct. One will be a
Yes.
3-year seat, one will be a 1-year seat at the election, as I understand it.
Right. So realistically, we're just appointing 2 commissioners until May 2025.
That's a good point. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
We're appointing them to 5-month terms. I guess that's how to look at it.
Mhm.
So I just wanted it to be clear because I wasn't sure in my own mind. It doesn't actually matter if we designate one person to be the 2026 term and then one of them is the 2025 term, because these are temporary appointments. Both of
Correct.
them need to run for re-election in 2025.
Correct.
Okay, great.
But practically
point.
speaking, nobody, if you are appointed to the 1-year term, why would you not run for reelection for that position and instead run against the person who's up for the 2-year term? So you have one position that goes vacant with no candidate, and the other position, 2 people are running against each other. It's not practical to, it's legal what you said, but it's not practical.
Although it happened at caucuses last year. I can't remember what the position was, but it was actually like 2 positions and 2 people ran for one and the loser just went for like whatever the other one was.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna say,
Right.
that's
I
the
feel
way
like
it
things have
happens.
happened.
that's what would happen, right? I think,
Yeah,
because
crazy
it's like,
things have happened.
in fact, tonight, right? It looks like one of the appointees is for a 1-year term, and then one of the appointees is for a 2-year term. So I think a couple of the candidates have expressed a particular interest in the 2-year term. But ultimately, when they go to run for re-election, the one who is nominally getting a longer term tonight will actually be running for a shorter elected term of 1
Yeah,
year,
absolutely.
whereas the other person will be running presumably for re-election, possibly unopposed, for a 3-year term. So it's like,
Yep.
it's
So it
confusing.
sounds like it's a longer term, but it's not. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my point.
But now that we can wrap our mind around that, are there any other questions before we hear from any applicants? All right, so I do see that all 3 applicants are actually in the audience here. Raise your hand if you'd like to make a brief statement about anything. I'll take people in order of their hands being raised. Taylor, please go ahead and speak to the audience.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to join this meeting. My name is Taylor Rycroft. I've been a resident in Sherborn for almost 5 years. I moved here with my wife in 2020, right before lockdown. And we've raised 3 girls here. We have 3 daughters, 5, 3, and 1. And my 5-year-old just started kindergarten at Pine Hill. And my background is in environmental engineering and bioengineering. And my grad school education focused on environmental treatment processes. So drinking water, wastewater treatment in particular. I'm currently an environmental engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers. And I work on a lot of environmental cleanup projects, usually dealing with chemicals or some sort of invasive species in the water. But it always comes back to like water quality. And I'm also a certified wastewater treatment operator in Massachusetts, grade 4 municipal. I'm inactive, obviously, because I have another job with the Corps of Engineers, but I keep that around because I'm always interested in potentially making a switch into wastewater treatment. So I always kind of have a tie to drinking water, wastewater, civil engineering type work. And so I'm interested in this role. I do want to get more involved with the town. I do sit on the board of the Leland Farm Condo Associations. That's where I live. But I'd like to get more involved with the town dynamics. And this was an area where I felt like I could add value with my background, expertise, and interest. So that's why I threw my name in the hat for this. I have no particular desire for whichever term appointment, and now it's pretty clear that it doesn't really matter. We're all sort of campaigning to be involved for 5 months until the election, but I'd like to contribute to the town, and this is where I thought my skill set would fit best. So thank you for your consideration, and it was nice to be involved in this call. Appreciate your time.
Very good. Thank you much, Taylor. Let's make a quick note. I was a grade 4, actually, industrial wastewater operator for remediation systems I used to install and design. Frank, if it's okay, I'm going to recognize Meredith to keep the flow going of the applicants. Meredith, please say what you want to say.
Thank you. Thank you for opening the floor. And my name is Meredith Leslowski. I'm at 34 Greenwood Street. I've been an observer at many, many meetings over the past many months and have seen clearly that the governing positions to resident ratio is very high. And so the town needs a lot of people to throw in their hat and help out. I can say after listening to Taylor, I would select him first. My background is in bio and organic chemistry, but I have been a science educator for 24 years now. So in terms of practical experience, I would put myself below Taylor significantly, but I can at least understand what is going on. So I think that I could be of some benefit as a water commissioner. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Absolutely. And then finally, Mr. Bob Murchison, the third applicant. Go ahead, Bob. Say what you want.
Well, I don't think I need to make a whole lot of an introduction about myself, given how much time I've spent in front of a lot of folks in town in the last year or two. But I do want to speak for just a minute to kind of what this job is. And by the way, before I do that, I'll say that both Taylor and Meredith, I read their resumes. They have very, very strong resumes, particularly in science, and I do not, clearly. So I think my application offers something completely different than science. What I would point out to the select board and to folks out there is that the original creation of this role in town was focused on municipal water coming into town. And it turned out when the position was created that municipal water didn't in fact come into town. And so over the years, I think this group of folks, and it is advisory. It has no, just to remind people, it has no regulatory authority, no oversight of any building projects or anything like that. It's really advisory. But it was really created to be about municipal water and bringing municipal water to town. Well, lo and behold, we hopefully are on the cusp of bringing municipal water to town. And so I think the focus of this group should, at least in part, not completely, but in part, return to a focus on municipal water and how to bring it to town and how to think about that. That's where my passion actually comes from, and it's why I raised my hand for the job. I've been talking in front of the planning board and other bodies in town about bringing in municipal infrastructure for a decade. I remember back when Eric was on the planning board, 10 years ago, we had these conversations. We were doing back of the envelope. I know Roger very well. Roger and I have had a million conversations on this topic. And I think that, my passion for it is is real. I'm probably the only person or one of a very small number of people on this call who has actually read the enabling legislation for bringing municipal water to town. I'm very, very familiar with it. I disagreed with parts of it. I testified in front of the advisory committee at the hearing. I am very, very passionate. I think it's actually critical for the town to get this done. And so I think my candidacy is really about helping to bring that side of the job back into play. And I don't see this as a purely science job. And so, what I would encourage you to do is choose one of the other two candidates for their deep science experience and choose me for a passion and a knowledge about water regulatory issues in town and about bringing municipal water into town. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Frank, I'll recognize you now.
Okay, I just want to say a few words. First of all, I think that Bob Murchison has demonstrated, the personal drive to get things done. His perseverance to advance affordable housing and jump through all the necessary hoops demonstrates this. But the many projects that Bob has underway and the good possibility that Bob would move forward with other opportunities would make conflict of interest a continual problem. The Water Commission is asked to provide input, opinion on new developments on public versus private well systems, etc. The Water Commissioners send one member to participate on the Groundwater Protection Committee. This committee also provides opinions to the ZBA and other committees. The person who has projects before these committees would be in constant conflict of interest. And the Water Commission is only a 3-member committee. The projects on Coolidge Street will require a water district. It's my understanding there will be 5 commissioners of this district. I've heard that 2 of the commissioners will be appointed by the developers, 2 by the Sherborn Selectmen, and 1 by the Sherborn Water Commissioners. Bob is, or wants to be, one of the developers. It would be a big conflict if Bob was on the board that picks a commission member that could impact his development. For these reasons, I do not think that Bob should be appointed as a water commissioner. And the other 2 candidates, I think, have scientific backgrounds will be very useful to the committee going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank.
Eric?
Yeah, Bob. Kind of raise your hand. I can't. Yeah. Paul, go ahead.
I just wanted Frank to introduce himself and tell everybody that he's a water commissioner and he's been a water commissioner for a while and so on and so on. He just jumped into his speech, but the viewing public may not know that. So I'm asking you, Eric, if you could ask him to say a few more words.
So I did identify him as a water commissioner earlier in this agenda item, but that's still a good point. Frank, do you want to say anything about your position? And actually, I'll ask you a question, Frank. So your thought is the science. Well, no, just go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Well, I was probably the very junior member on the Water Commission because Roger Demler has done it for a number of years, and Tara Horahan actually designs water systems. So we had a couple of science background people on the committee, and I've been on a shorter period of time. I mean, I've been in the past had to forward things to the town meeting as being on the school committee and having to ask for capital projects and working with other town departments to get things moving and going. But as far as a science background, these other 2 people, I think, have a great deal more than I do. But and also, I'm the only one left. I didn't do the other 2 in, mind you. They're,
anyone thought that.
So we'll look forward to getting new members. I'm glad we have the interest. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, how about discussion amongst the board now? Okay, so let me do this. And before I recognize Stephen, I'll kind of do this iteration. Maybe let me actually throw this at the applicants. Does anyone have a preference which one you get nominated to? So if you say no, what I'll probably do is I'll accept motions to nominate for, I'll do the first one, the 1-year term. You know, I mean, the 1-year term was going to turn into a 3-year election or whatever else. That's part I'll do unless anyone states a preference. But before I do that, I'll recognize Stephen.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to get the discussion started. I appreciate Frank's comments. Generally speaking, when we're appointing somebody to an existing board, I take the comments of the existing board pretty seriously. And being somewhat of a scientist myself, I also generally have a pro-scientific bias. So my initial thought also is to appoint both Taylor and Meredith. I also, you are two names and faces that generally I have not seen around town very much. I mean, I know that Meredith that you have been somewhat more involved recently, but I do think that getting more new people volunteering for our town boards and committees is actually an important thing. And this town, we get our hooks into you and then never let go. That's what happened to me. So we're gonna do it to you as well. So I just wanted to say that I am supporting both Taylor and Meredith for these appointments.
All right. Yeah, Bob mentioned he saw me and I was on a board 10 years ago. That's funny. So, like I said, I'll recognize each of the select board members, but if there's going to be a motion, I respectfully request that someone make a motion for the 1-year term first, so the term to expire May of 25. So I'm going to recognize people in the order. Jeff, you're
Well, I
next.
would concur. I'm just concurring with everything Steven said because I mean, Bob's certainly talented and very knowledgeable, and I think he could still add a lot of support without being on the board because he raises good issues and participates often. I'm actually not so motivated by the scientific background. It's more getting new people in town and also not old farts like me to be on boards and committees. To get some of the younger, newer residents would be my preference.
Okay. Paul, you had your hand raised. You're next.
Yeah, two things I wanted to say. First, when you have a small pool like this, it's often more diplomatic to consider all three of them nominated and not have to go through a nomination process and just go to a roll call of the board as to which ones you want to vote for. It's just easier and less wear and tear on the applicant, which leads me to my other point that this town is built on applicants. We cherish every applicant. And I wanted to say to all three applicants how welcome all of them are at applying and having interest in the position. And we're in a situation that not all of you can be on this committee or be elected. That means there are other positions in town, there are other opportunities in town. Don't be discouraged. Be open to other positions in the town. So again, thank you, all three of you, for coming forward.
So, question what you said there, Paul, about making like a single motion. I don't mind doing that, but I do think we have to specify someone's going to get nominated for a term to expire May of 25, and someone's going to or expire. No, I guess they're both expiring. I don't know how to do this, but
yes, the way other towns do it is that they'd say, okay, for the 1-year position, we'll go around amongst the 6 people voting, and you just vote for whoever you want. Why do we have to have nominations? I mean, we're going to actually have nomination speeches, and we're going to have all this formality. It doesn't.
Eric, I can make this easy for you if you're willing to recognize me.
Sure, Paul, if you don't mind
Sure.
receding because you were in.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
So I would like to withdraw my application for the position tonight. I can read the room pretty easily. And I would like to say to Paul's point that 3 years ago, when I had no development projects going, I raised my hand for the advisory board. I know a lot of people don't think I know much about finance, but I did spend 30 years in that field. And I've been passionate about town government for 10 years. I raised my hand. That was ignored. About a year ago, I raised my hand for the planning board, which is not a regulatory body that I appear in front of. I never received an answer on that application. So to kind of say, keep applying. Well, I'm reading the room and it's pretty obvious. And one of my criticisms of the town, frankly, is that we need to have differences of thinking on these boards. We can't continually appoint and elect, frankly, people who have very, very similar views. I obviously have terribly different public policy views from a lot of people in town, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be involved. People often say, well, Bob, why do you do 40Bs? Why do you do all this stuff? Why don't you collaborate with us? Why don't you work with us? Well, this is the third time I've raised my hand, and I get it. It's totally, it's a political process. And I just want you guys to know that I try. I care about the town and I want to contribute, but because of my policy views, I'm shut out. So the last thing I will say is there is a incredible congresswoman who recently died named Shirley Chisholm. And what Shirley Chisholm said was, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I will see you all on my folding chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Okay, I think that changes the situation here a little bit. So Paul, I'm just going to clarify. Well, you know what? Given that there's two, and I get what Paul's saying a little bit here. Let's just simply let's do it the old school way, if you don't mind. I kind of get what Paul's saying. You kind of say the 1 year term. Let's do a motion for the term that's supposed to expire in 2025. Let's just do that. If someone can make a motion, and then I'll just go right through it.
So I would suggest that Meredith said that she felt that Taylor was stronger as a candidate. So I would take her at her word and appoint her for the 1 year term and appoint Taylor for the 2 year term.
You do realize, though, the 1 year term is actually a longer term because they both go for election, and the 1 year term, the 3 year term at the election, right? The 1 year term is actually longer than the 2 year term. All right, whatever. You know what I'm saying, Paul? That the 1 year term might be viable. Yeah, Meredith, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, feel free to work this however you see works best for the town.
On that vote, I think I'm going to make a nomination because I think it's what Paul intends. I'm going to nominate Taylor for a term to expire 2025. They're both up for election in 2025. He'll rerun for a 3 year. Meredith will rerun for a 1 year. That's kind of what's going to go. Is that okay, Paul, if I do that?
Absolutely. That is what I intended.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, Stephen?
Aye.
Jeff?
All right.
Marion?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Am I as well? All right. Do I have a nomination for the term to expire 2026?
I nominate Meredith Wesolowski.
Okay. Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Stephen?
Aye.
Jeff?
All right.
Marion?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
I might as well.
And,
All right.
and if you don't mind,
Oh.
I am also aye for both.
So sorry. You're aye for both of them,
Yes.
Frank? I'm on automatic. I did not mean to do that. I'm just running on automatic here.
Can I say one more word before we leave this?
Yeah, sure. Good.
Then I'm sorry that, we heard about the application and not getting appointed from Bob. And in response to that, I would say, number one, none of those involve the Board of Selectmen per se. Number two, there are times where if you're persistent, you'll find a match and you'll find the support that you need. So I wouldn't draw the conclusion that you are left with a folding chair. I really would urge you to keep at it.
Oh, I will.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bob's the definition of persistent in my experience.
I'm not going away, Paul. It's just you're not allowing me to have a voice on the inside, and that's
Which is a
okay.
good thing, which is a good thing.
The vote we take or you took.
Good
So
thing being, just so Jeff meant good thing and persistent, not about the voice, but okay. Okay, with all that, let's move on to agenda number 4, presentation of 2024 pavement management report. Sean and Jeremy, you gonna kick it off, then we'll hand it over to EPG, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm just gonna let, Sean, and we have Frank Mariciano. I'm not gonna pronounce that right, sorry, Frank, from Environmental Partners Group. So I'm gonna turn it over to those two to talk about this topic. John?
All right, so whoever, feel free to kick off, and if you need to share, I think you can share for presentation.
I'll give Frank a quick.
Oh, what was that, Sean?
I was stepping over Jeremy. Well, I'll give Frank a quick intro, not so much for Frank, but for those that remember, we've done this process several times. It was with a different firm. So this is a little bit of a reset. There is some history in the pavement management process. We were using robotics on a different firm. So it's interesting, and this is a great way for everyone to kind of get familiar with the presentation. Take it away, Frank.
Right, Frank.
Okay, I'm Frank Marinaccio. I'm a registered professional engineer in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. I work for Environmental Partners, an Apex company, and specialize in pavement preservation and transportation networks. I started my career on the municipal side. I worked for a municipality, a city, for about 8 years before moving to the private side. I've been on the private side for about 8 years now, so half and half. We started in this process a few months ago and are now at the point where we have all the data and everything to display. So I'll share my screen for presentation. Want to make sure everybody can see that. Is the presentation here? Okay. Okay, so pavement management. Pavement management is important because it's the practice of planning pavement maintenance to maximize value and funding. Knowing where to spend your dollars in an effective and way to maintain your roadway network in a safe and serviceable to residents and visitors alike. It enables you to give you the data and the information you need to form the right repair on the right road at the right time. So making sure that your investments are going to the right places. When we talk about pavements, pavements don't degrade linearly. They kind of have this drop-off effect. So they're pretty good for a while until it starts to crack and break up, and then it becomes a lot more expensive to fix it when it gets to that point. So the whole process of pavement management is to spend less money on a good road to keep it in good shape while you're also trying to fix those bad roads and bring them up to a serviceable level. So the whole idea of pavement preservation is not just fixing the worst roads, because if you do that, you'll never catch up and you'll end up spending a lot more money that way. So we took a 4-step process to develop the town's pavement management program, to collect the data that we need for the basis for everything in an objective way, organize that data, assess it and analyze it to get some key measures that we used for planning, and then actually doing planning and action planning for future the future. So the first one is the collection of data. So the first thing that we did, we took the centerline files for the town and went through and made sure to categorize all of the roads, accepted private roadways and state roadways. So this report in this program only focuses on the accepted roadways. We want to focus on the roads that the town is in charge of maintaining. Private roadways are obviously maintained by the private entities that own them, and state roadways are maintained by the state. So this project is on the town accepted roadways. The town has about 55 miles of roads that you operate and maintain for the public. Out of those 55 miles, there's a breakdown of arterials, collectors, locals, and the local low volumes are your dead ends and cul-de-sacs. So local roads that don't really connect anything. So you can see a majority of your roads are local roads, but you have a lot of arterial and collectors, which services mostly the main traffic in town. So the way that we did the data collection, we used a sub-consultant called Civil AI, similar to robotics, although they use photo capture on top of a vehicle instead of within the windshield, and LiDAR technology, which is a radar technology to detect distances of cracks. And if you can see the image on the top right, it creates a point cloud so that they can actually take measurements and have it be more of a objective view of what's actually out there. What do the pavements look like right now? The product provides the photographs every 10 feet. That's consistent with past programs that the town has had. This is a cost-effective manner. And like I said, you get objective data. So when you repeat this in a few years, 5 years down the road, whenever you repeat it, you'll be getting data that is consistent with the last time that you did it. So it's easily comparable apples to apples. This process scans the roads and determines the distresses of the roads, how many potholes, how many cracks, and the density and severity of those cracks in the pavement, so that we can use that data to compare the roadways in an objective way. So the next step is to organize that data. So we use GIS, Geographic Information Systems, which is a way to take that data and display it in map form. So you can categorize any assets, view the assets in a map form, but they're also tied to tabular forms too. So you can see it, all your data in tables, and sort that way, as well as in the map environment. So this is something that when you're viewing it in the map environment, you can add multiple assets later. We created a dashboard for Sherborn. So this is a dashboard here that shows the pavement. Part of this project was scanning for pavement. In a future date, if you do any other assets that the town maintains, like sidewalks, signs, parking lots, street lights, guardrails, you can integrate that data right in here and show it in this dashboard or in this GIS environment. So this dashboard shows the breakdown of the condition of the roadways and what the recommended treatments are. So now you have this basis that you can build on in the future. So when we look at assessing that data, what we did was we took the condition of the roadway. If you see this figure over to the right, you have an industry scale. All the roadways are rated from 0 to 100, 100 being the best, just paved it yesterday, to 0, which is basically a gravel road. This project only focuses on paved surfaces. We didn't scan gravel roads because they change so often. And so this is all asphalt roadways. There were no concrete roadways in town that we scanned. So based on that pavement condition index, a PCI, any PCI that was between 100 and 90 was no maintenance required or defer maintenance. From 90 to 80 is that second tier, which is your routine maintenance, something like a crack seal, you're filling the cracks, or a fog seal, which is another type of pavement treatment option. Preventative maintenance is 80 to 65. So that's just short of your your minor rehabilitation. Your minor rehabilitation is what most towns do with mill and overlay. And then you want to avoid the 45 and lower, which is major rehabilitation, full depth reclamation, pulling up all the asphalt and the gravel, and repaving the road. So as you can see there too, roads that are at 100 cost a lot less to maintain than roads that are at a 0. I'll show that on the next slide too. So taking all that data, all the scanned roads, the 55 miles in Sherborn, the total rating for the whole system was a 74, which is pretty good. That's pretty consistent, middle of the pack from a lot of towns that we see. Obviously, different towns have different amounts of miles of roads, but it's a very good starting point. And you can see the breakdown here that by miles, which categories the roads fell into. So major rehabilitation, which is the most expensive, the 0 to 45 PCI rating, you only have about 2.5 miles. So that's really good because that's the most expensive. We use a unit cost of $45 for that. So you can see it would be about, if you were to repave all the roads that were from 0 to 45 tomorrow, it would cost about 1.5 million. So a majority of the roads kind of split between, you have a lot more on the higher end. Minor rehabilitation was 13 miles, preventative maintenance 14 miles. Those are about the same. Routine maintenance 21 miles. That was the biggest category, which is great. That's your crack sealing and just kind of your normal maintenance of roadways. So it's a lot more cost effective to be providing routine maintenance. So the whole point of this is to get everything out of the lower categories and just get them into the preventative maintenance or higher so that you're just maintaining the status of the roadways instead of rebuilding them from scratch all the time. So the figure at the very bottom, the $8 million is what it would cost to bring all your roads up to 100 tomorrow, just to kind of give you an idea of where your transportation network stands. A few options over here on the right, some that we pulled out. So Western Avenue, you can see a picture. It looks pretty good. That's routine maintenance, would be kind of like a crack seal, cheaper option. Greenwood Street would be preventative maintenance. The roadway is starting to oxidize. You're getting some ponding issues there. Woodland Street, minor rehabilitation. That's where you would be looking to do a mill and overlay or a more traditional route with a lot of cracking there. So what do you do with all this data? So what we just did, the pavement management program and scanning the roads gave us the condition of the roadways, the existing conditions, or the PCI, the pavement condition index. Now with that information, you now have the data to start planning for the future. So you want to use cost benefit value, other municipal needs, utility infrastructure, other projects that are going on. If you don't just use the condition of the roadway to plan your next steps. So we prioritize the repairs. We provided a cost benefit value report as part of this program, which takes into account the average daily traffic of the roads, the cost of the repair that's recommended, the life expectancy of that repair. Is it going to be something that's really costly, but will last a long time? Or is it something that's less expensive that you can do multiple times? And I'll get into that a little bit later. Taking into account underground utilities. If you need to replace gas mains or water mains, you don't want to pave that road and then replace the gas main the next year. So taking all this information, putting it together so that DPW and the town can plan for the future and how you want to spend your funds. So the estimated network value of all the roads as a municipality is about $35 million. Like we talked about earlier, it's about $8 million is the current backlog of what it would take to take all those roads up to 100 and have 100 across the board. The overall town spending is about $250,000 a year, and the annual Chapter 90 historic funding has been about $250,000 a year. So it seems that you're spending about $500,000 a year on the roadway network. So to do a little bit of forecasting on that, right now you're starting at the 74 as a pavement condition index. And if you wanted to maintain that year to year using an optimized approach, the data shows that you would need about $1.3 million to maintain where you are today. As you spend less, obviously you would expect to see a degradation in that total pavement score. And as you spend more in an efficient manner, you would expect that to increase. So this program allows you to be proactive rather than reactive. So now that you know the existing conditions of your roads, you want to maintain the roads that are in good condition and keep them in good condition, spending that lower tier of pavement preservation while also tackling some of the bad roads first. But as you saw in the funding slide just before this, if you spent all your money on just doing the bad roads, your good roads would then become bad roads if you don't keep them maintained. The good news is that the Sherborn DPW department is already doing some of those pavement preservation techniques. So it's things that the town has seen before. So now you have the data to really back that up. So here's an example of two towns that share a roadway. So the municipality border is right down the center of this roadway. Back in 2004, both the towns got together, they pooled their money, and they milled and overlaid this road. So they started with a brand new road on both sides, paved a new double yellow center line down the middle, and called it a day. In 2010, Community 2 went to Community 1 and said, hey, we want to do some crack sealing and microsurfacing, which are preventative treatments. The Community 1 said, no, thank you, we don't want to spend any money. We just paved it 6 years ago. So Town 2 went and did crack sealing and microsurfacing on the whole, on their side of the street, and left the other side because it wasn't their town. In 2017, the two towns had to redo their roads, look at it again. Town 2 only had to do crack sealing and microsurfacing, and the other town had to do a mill and overlay or reclamation because their road, as you can see on the left, was in a lot worse condition than the municipality 2 on the right side that took care of their good road and kept it good the entire time. So they had significant cost savings, while the other town, who just waited for the road to get really bad before they did anything, are now going to spend about 2 or 3 times the cost to renew this road. So this kind of shows the two different approaches. The gray is if you do nothing for the whole road, wait until it gets really bad, and then pave it and spend a lot of money to pave it. While the other blue is the optimized approach, which is what we want. You want to spend small pockets of money to bring the condition of the road and keep it in good standing. You end up spending a lot less money that way, and you can touch more roads. So you can, out of your 55 miles of your road network, you're spending all your money on just a half a mile of road every single year, you'll never catch up. But if you can do pavement preservation techniques that are a lot cheaper and keep good roads in good condition, then you can touch a lot more miles of roads every year. The other thing that the optimized approach helps is that red line there, which is called kind of the complaint line. That's the area where when the road starts getting below that PCI value of about a 60, 65, that's when you start getting potholes. You spend a lot of energy filling potholes and just trying to maintain what's there, getting complaints from residents that the road is so bad. Whereas an optimized approach helps to keep you above that, so it keeps it serviceable to everybody that's using it. So I know it's a lot of information. I'll answer some questions, and we'll continue to be a resource to the town moving forward too. So even after today, we'll be available for questions and to work with the town to help plan these infrastructure improvements. But this platform is meant to be kind of a living document. So we want to update it every year. When you pave your roads after your paving program, update your pavement management program, rerun the report so that you get an updated overall score for those roads, and to take credit for all of the work that you're doing, and being consistent in updating that information. The industry standard is to rescan the roads about every 3 to 5 years. And in between that, you can use some modeling to determine how the roads are degrading, and using the data to plan what your paving program is going to look like in the next, 1, 2, 3 to 5 years. So that's everything that we've done for the town up until this point, and open it up to questions.
Thank you very much, Frank. Do you mind taking down the share just so we can see people either? Well, to no one's surprise, I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Major rehab, is that reconstruction, reclamation, or kind of either one? Do you know what I mean?
It's full depth reconstruction, reclamation, cold in place recycling. Minor rehabilitation would be your standard mill and overlay, a leveling course, or like a hot in place recycling.
Yeah, I definitely got that. Was the major, because I know that can go either way, the reclamation or reconstruction.
Right.
That's kind of that one there. I mean, first of all, it's very good. And I want to make a general statement where I think, Sean with the funds he's had has done an excellent job kind of holding things together in the last several years. So I do want to say that. I think it's helped us a lot, which kind of goes to some of my, I guess, questions, or may not, but this kind of questions here. Just looking at a handful of these that I looked at, like the 3 dirt roads, Green Lane, Cross Street, Rockwood Street, and I guess Linden Lane. I didn't know that existed. I mean, I've never seen a PCI 4. I'm going to go there just to see 4. I've never even heard of a 4.
Those were revised to remove them from the program, because we're only looking at paved asphalt roadways as part of this program.
And that's my thing. So we costed one of them, Rockwood, 2-3 million, whatever it was, because the storm was so clear that's not going to happen. I would actually advise to use in your chart the $2 per square foot gravel road maintenance per se might be more appropriate, because those we actually use we maintain with our own forces. Maybe Sean could correct me, versus calling in a paving contractor or calling in whatever. Those are ones which it probably is more appropriate just to use the $2 per square yard, I mean, whatever it is, gravel maintenance on those there. And other ones like Ains and Dopping, I drove on them. They didn't seem that bad, but whatever. Even if it is, I don't see us like reconstructing those. And you can do things like peel and pave. We just because they're actually nice and flat. The shape is good. There's no sunken portions of it. So the base is probably good. Those you would just like peel off, maybe put down 4 inches, like 2.5, 1.5. You know what I mean? Those are ones. So what I'm trying to go is, I think, and it's conservative, and I get that, but I don't think the cost is quite what's being. I think there's some definite costs. Is not quite as what's being presented. That's all. I think that maybe the cost might wind up being a little bit less, because you look at what Sean's been doing with basically. I think he has had 400,000 a year. I know some of it wasted on the rotary, but we've had 400,000 plus Chapter 90. And it feels like our PCI has gone up. I'm not sure what it was in previous reports, but just simply driving around, the roads are in better condition than they were 5-6 years ago, in that range there. The other thing is, these numbers are pretty similar. I work for a city which that does this, and these numbers are pretty similar, the per unit cost. So that's good to see that there with the numbers. But we have very little to no utilities. Few catch basins. Maybe there's a gas main on Western Ave. That's about it. And that really saves that's a pretty good savings compared to going out, adjusting your castings or sinking or doing whatever you got to do for the reclaim machine. And I do think that, like I said, these are just conservative high. It's just my opinion on some of these.
Right. Yeah. So it's important to note that this whole program is a planning level program. So we apply those unit costs based on Mass DOT unit cost of projects throughout the entire state. We also compare it to the specific district prices. So projects within that district, and then also past projects. So it's meant to be a planning level that includes inflation and things like that too, so that a lot of towns they'll take that number and they'll say, okay, we want to go out for referendum and get exactly whatever number you come back as your backlog. But then they start doing curbing and sidewalks and street lighting and utilities and rain gardens and stormwater improvements, and the money doesn't go that far. This is strictly just for pavement, which is a little bit one-to-one with Sherborn. Like you said, there are a lot less utilities, a lot less sidewalks and things like that that go into the roadway construction. But it is a planning level document. You're going to have to, whatever you pick for your 2025 roads, you still will have to do engineering to put those out to bid or do them yourself, or look at the structure of the roadway, like you said. Does the roadway have a crown? Do we need to do pavement cores and extra engineering to figure out what the appropriate treatment would be? So we have those 5 major categories, whether it's minor rehabilitation, but there's different types of techniques that you can do within that band also. So doing that extra step, using that engineering judgment for DPW or whoever to determine what the actual specific treatment will be and if it will be conducive to that road. So.
Okay. So I'm gonna recognize Stephen, then Sean. So Sean will probably respond to whatever Stephen says as well, because I'm just gonna respond to this. But let me see. Let me do Stephen first.
Great, thank you. And Frank, excellent presentation. Thanks. So this is a question, and I guess I would open. I would welcome comments from Frank, but also from Sean or Eric or Jeremy. I think all of you have a lot of expertise in this area. But essentially, the chart that you showed in terms of the budgeting, essentially you are asking for recommending $1.3 million per year just to basically maintain the current status of the roadways, which is more than twice the amount that we currently budget per year. I guess my question would be, if we were to, let's say, spend the $1.75 million, for a sort of modest increase in the PCI, let's say that we were to do that over the next 3 or 5 years. I mean, is it likely that we would get to a state where we could maintain the condition of the roads with $500,000 per year spend on roadways, or is that sort of an unreasonably low amount to be spending on the roads in this town?
No, that's the whole point. Is you want to basically, when I showed the degradation curve, is you want to catch all those roads before they kind of fall off that cliff, and you're spending 3 and 4 times as much money to bring those back up to 100. So you want to keep those roads that are in good condition good, while you're still doing some of the bad ones. Like I pointed out, the major rehabilitation was 2.5 miles, but just to do those 2.5 miles would cost $1.5 million. So if you just spent that, like you said, say you did do the $1.75 million and you just did the worst roads, you're going to have a lot more worse roads next year, because those ones that were just in that tipping point are now in that lower category. So you don't want to just spend that money in the lowest category doing the worst first. You want to have an optimized approach that kind of hits all of those bandings. So if you were to spend that 1.75 million per year for the next 3 years, 5 years, you would show an increase in your overall PCI. But then, yes, the hope is that when you get to that kind of tipping point, whatever it is, if it's a 77 or an 80 PCI overall, that your funding could come down because you'd be doing all preservation, and you wouldn't have any worse roads that need that major rehabilitation.
Sean, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a slightly different response. So I need to remind everyone, Frank is this whole presentation is pavement preservation and pavement maintenance. So there's hidden numbers that aren't accounted for here, and that's stormwater and other infrastructure. So when you look at it from a financial standpoint, when you're saying, well, could we maintain the roads at 500,000? Yes, but the hidden number is the storm drains and infrastructure that's collapsing. And so it seems like we don't have a lot. Most people think we don't have a lot of storm drains in town. There's 1,000 of them. Most of them are collapsing slowly, right? If you think without even looking at a map, you can guess that half of them are in neighborhoods that were built in when, Marion? The 60s and 70s. So they're 50 to 60 years old.
Yeah.
Cement blocks collapse when they're 50 to 60 years old.
Mhm.
So they're all sinking. So a neighborhood like Cider Hill, which is actually the newest neighborhood that of any size, there's probably 40, there might be more catch basins. Every single one of them is at least 6 inches low to the road right now. So while Frank shows that it needs minor rehab, just resetting all those catch basins and repairing those, resetting the castings and repairing the catch basins is probably going to cost just as much as the minor rehab. So that's where, there's a difference between what we've been spending and on overall maintenance. Because we use the same number. We don't separate it. At town meeting, we don't say, well, we're going to spend $400,000 on pavement management and $200,000 on collapsed catch basins that may or may not fall, or culverts that collapse, because it's been the same money. When Route 16 culvert collapsed, that was the same money. We didn't spend that money on pavement preservation. We spent it on the roadways. So it muddies it up a little bit. It's safe to say that we should be probably spending. And remember, 1.3 million is the total of his estimate to keep it. So that's less than $1 million of town money, of less than $1 million more than what we're spending, because you got the 252 that you expect to see on the Chapter 90. And maybe more. It was more this year because of the fair share.
That's right. We got fair share. How much fair shares? We do 400.
It was half of the two. So 252 was the Chapter 90 allotment, and then they gave us a 50% on top of that. So 180.
Right.
375.
375.
Yeah. So 375 plus the 400 is 775 you spend on roads. I guarantee per mile we're probably one of the better towns. I can almost guarantee that, actually. Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought there was a good point raised earlier about the degradation of the roadways in Sherborn, and that there's not many utilities underground. And just a technical question for Frank, as far as the actual modeling. So in the model, you can actually put in a different degradation curve for each roadway and tweak those based on the existing conditions or what you think how those roads may deteriorate over time. A good point being made that without all the underground utilities, there's not as much street openings and pavement cuts that can lead to advanced degradation, which we don't see as much here in Sherborn as opposed to, say, Natick or Framingham. So is that something that you consider in the model, Frank, when you model the roadways in a town like Sherborn, that there's less utility cuts and potentially more lifespan for pavement as a result?
Right. Usually, we also work with towns too, when we get into that like capital planning process, is to bring in the underground utility providers, whether it's National Grid, Eversource, water department, sewer department, if they're separate in the town, and really looking at what the policies are for doing the permanent trench restoration. So some towns where National Grid is rapidly doing gas main replacements, they're getting half the road paved by National Grid once they do their work. So we take that into account on the other side too, is if they are doing a lot of work, that you're actually getting better roads because they're paving them from the private standpoint. So we have the degradation curve to kind of model in those in-between years, but scanning the roadways has become a lot cheaper and a lot more consistent and reliable, that we'd like to scan and get good data more often than not. We can use modeling in the meantime, but that degradation curve is kind of a catch-all. You'd have to do a lot more engineering to have it be very specific, because it depends on what you did to the road in the first place. Did you do a full depth or a reclamation? Then you would expect it to follow that curve. If you just did a mill and overlay, and say you did a mill and overlay on a road that was kind of on the lower side and should have probably been a full depth, then it's going to deteriorate faster. But if you did a mill and overlay on a road that was in pretty good condition, then you might expect it to be longer. So A lot goes into that. How much traffic is on the road, how much truck traffic. A lot of the pavement designs, the thickness of pavement is really based on truck traffic because of how heavy it is, and less on how many cars use it. Whether it's like an arterial or a collector or a local road will have a different curve too. So we have that all in the modeling, but it's only so accurate based on the actual hard data that you have feeding into the system. So right now you have a really good pavement management program that is like strictly based on data because we just scanned all the roads. As you get into the further years and relying more on the models, it gets less accurate. So that's why we say the industry standard is about 3 to 5 years rescanning the roads to kind of look for, future.
And I would imagine in, the 3 to 5 years, if we utilize the same methodology that you use this time, we'd be able to fine tune some of those degradation curves on the roadways and get a more accurate model after we get.
Yeah.
I guess my final question: what towns were the roads split the line? That was crazy.
I want that picture.
Like us
I
to
really
tell.
want that picture.
I gotta guess though.
What's
I think it's Mattapoisett and Pembroke or whatever the borders Mattapoisett.
That specific example is from Connecticut.
Okay.
But we see it a lot in communities. I've been doing pavement management programs for different communities for, like I said, 8 years now, and have probably done, well over or 20 to 30 communities, and then working with them every year to develop their paving programs. And the ones that have more robust pavement preservation techniques can touch more miles per year with the same amount of money. So if you have that, say you had that, $700,000 worth of funding, are you touching a half mile of road with that 700,000, or are you touching 10 miles of road? So you can see just in that difference, you'd have, a half a mile out of 55 miles. That's a very low percent. If you touch 10 miles out of 50 miles, then you're touching a lot more of your network every single year, and that's how you gain that better condition overall.
Paul, you have your hand raised.
Yes, as I went through all the pages of this analysis, which was so thorough and so meticulous and has virtually every road in town, I was trying to figure out what roads are the ones that we should be doing this year. And as I went through it, there were so many ways to look at things and so many categories and columns. What is the worst road in town?
That's not necessarily the road we should do.
Linden Lane, Paul. Linden Lane. Is that even public? I guess it must be.
It is. It was accepted in the 60s, I think. It is an accepted road.
So at the end of the report, there's a summary of all the roadways with the ranking of their pavement condition. So you can see the worst road and the second worst road and the rest. It's right at the end of the report.
It looks like a glorified driveway.
So a good example of how you can't just look at the map. South Street is one of the worst roads, if not the worst.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So in one respect, we didn't want to lose it, and we probably could get away with something less than a full reclamation. But if we were to pave that road, we probably wouldn't do anything but really tick people off, because Natick has let that road go 10 times worse. They have potholes patched on top of potholes, and I think there's some animals living under some of those potholes. So it would do absolutely no good.
Traffic calming. That was a traffic calming project.
Right. The traveling public would not be very happy, because they often call me and tell me how disgusting the road is, and I remind them, check where the town line is, because Natick's much worse than Sherborn. So it wouldn't add a ton of value. And there's a few others. There's some neighborhoods that are almost on the cuff of being really bad. Ash Lane is a much more important road because there's buses. My kids went down that road for years in the buses, and they almost hit their head on the ceiling bouncing down the road. You know, and there's, you know, that cuts between Hollis and Woodland, so it's a pretty important road. It probably should be rebuilt.
So let me just, you said something intriguing, and I wanted to follow up on that, which is, it's not the worst road you want to pave.
Right.
So the other criteria that you use, if worst condition is one factor, what are the other factors that you put into the equation that lets you compute what road to do? You said already South Street is an example. You wouldn't want to do that road. So what is the formula?
Well,
Yeah.
Frank could give you a really elaborate answer on the pavement index, but there's, you know, there's the hidden things too, where the cost of maintenance. You know, if we have to go patch potholes on it, somebody just wrote Apple Street. Apple Street's not very well traveled, but it's in poor condition. Fixing a couple potholes over the winter in Apple Street isn't as bad a deal as fixing potholes you'll remember next to your property on Bullard Street. So we chip sealed Bullard Street long before it fell off the curb. One, because we could fix it. Two, because it's incredibly dangerous to fix potholes out there. And the same goes for North Main Street. So before North Main Street fell off, it was cracking so bad we couldn't crack seal it, so we chip sealed it. So some of those are factors. When we go through, if we go through a bad winter and the guys are going every week or every other week to fix potholes, and it's a place where we need a couple of cops to keep us from getting run over, that weighs into the equation of what to hit. Not just the pavement preservation, but you know, kind of the cost and the safety of doing business. And of course, the higher traffic, when a pothole blows out, because trucks are pounding on it all day, we don't even get a chance to fix it before people are blowing tires and suing the town. So we don't necessarily capture those. That's kind of the anecdotal data that I have that we have to kind of work through. So tonight, no one expects you to try to come up. I hope you don't try to come up with a direction of what to pave. That's in the background. We kind of just need a level of funding, you know, through town meetings. So early next spring, late winter, we have a good plan for what we're going to do next year.
And Paul, to add to what Sean said, you know, in the modeling and in the planning, there's a cost benefit value that is computed, and that Frank can get into the details of that, but that would consider the volume of traffic on the roadway, the utilization of the roadway, you know, the priority placed on the town for that. And you'd want to, you know, keep your major roads in better shape, and because they're more highly traveled. But that's sort of in those things would go into what roads you would plan as well, in addition to Sean's you know, firsthand knowledge.
That kind of goes to my comments about like Ames and Dopping Brook. I mean, it says, you know, reconstruct or whatever, but what's the traffic like 20 a day? You know what I mean? Something like that. Probably do
Right.
something
So
else.
that's what that's kind of at the heart of the cost benefit value. The very last page of the report is a map that shows the top 10%, top 20%, 30% of the cost benefit value. So it's taking into account the condition of the road, but what the recommended repair is. So just because you're doing an activity on that road doesn't mean you're paving it all necessarily. It could just mean crack sealing, if it's in good condition already. But I think it was like slide 15 or 16, where we showed that the big orange hexagons is you have the data of the CBV and the condition of the roadways to kind of give you a starting point, but you have to add in all those other things like Sean was talking about, the municipal needs, like how much traffic is using that, what type of traffic it is, whether it needs stormwater or drain reconstructions underneath the roads, whether there's like private utilities and things like that too. So the data is there as a starting point for the condition, not necessarily the worst road. So the data in what roads to look at first are really in that CBV, the cost benefit value, which is that very last map there. So the roads that are in really deep dark red are the ones you want to focus on first. And as you can see on that map, it's more the arterials, the major roadways that go through the town, which most residents probably use every single day, and visitors probably only use those roads. That doesn't mean that you don't want to do that dead end with 4 houses on it, but the town expenditure to keep that arterial road in really good condition, while also picking up some of the really bad roads at the same time, and working through those is important.
I also want to make just a quick comment. Back to the South Street, I meant to add it that I believe Natick site is unaccepted. Someone told me that a couple of years ago. Is the Sherborn site accepted? It must be if it's on.
There was a big
right?
debate, but it was determined that the county did in fact accept it. It's a public roadway as far as Natick was concerned, but there was some debate for years. The
Okay.
final outcome was that it was public. It was
Okay.
considered
Okay.
public.
But more importantly, Green Lane is in much better shape than South Street and Natick.
That's right.
But once you pave Green Lane next year, that'll be in even better shape.
Don't say that one, Steve.
Very funny.
And as you find things too, whether roads become unaccepted or you accept new roads, or you find one that was in the system from previous, you can update it too. So now you have that like starting basis to improve it every year as well. I know in the city I worked for, we started at 96 miles, and then the next year we had 95, and then the next year we had 94, and council was like, how are we losing roads? But it was just converting the ones that we had listed as public that were actually private, and helped us in winter maintenance, because then we didn't have to plow those roads also. So but it was interesting that, you know, we show 55.5 miles of roads. That's what we currently are showing, but as you find things that change or are, you know, incorrectly shown, then it becomes more accurate every year of what you maintain.
Yeah, 2 people on this board have live on roads that are less than 50. I think that's kind of funny. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was good guidance. Is there any more questions from the board, or even from the audience? All right. Is that some very good food for thought? Thank you very much for this presentation, and I'm sure we'll see more information about this again come advisory time.
Yeah, so I think the challenge for us will be what to incorporate into the 5-year capital plan. So, you know, all this information will help inform that. We'll be rolling out the consolidated 5-year capital plan December 15th, and we'll have some recommendations in there after a little further discussion between Sean and I as far as the roadways. So more to come on the capital plan.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 5, discussion regarding Sherborn Veterans Service Officer, Jeremy.
Thank you, Eric. We've talked about this or touched on this a couple of times in past meetings. We have some more definitive information to bring forward to you. Just a reminder to the board, Diana Hoke has served as the Veteran Services Officer, the VSO, for a number of years, done an excellent job. She'd love to continue on. Unfortunately, she doesn't now qualify to take the next necessary training to help give advice to get benefit for veterans to get benefits. That one of the requirements is that VSOs work 1,000 hours doing that each year. She doesn't have that level of effort, and Sherborn doesn't have that need. So she and Diane and I have been working to come up with another option for Sherborn. We've looked at a partnership with Dover, or a partnership with Dover and Natick, looking at the current Metro West Regional Veteran Service District, and more recently and most attractive, there is an agreement between Medfield and Walpole where they share a VSO officer, a full-time VSO, and an 18-hour clerk. They have an intermunicipal agreement, relatively simple, a copy of which is in your select board packet. We've had conversations with the town of Walpole, who is the lead. They are interested in having Sherborn join that small group to make it 3 communities that would be partners. Walpole sees a benefit in that. They've been talking for several years to get some more administrative help for the VSO officer. And if Sherborn were to join, they would propose, going forward to have 2 part-time clerks and the full-time veteran service officer, and to have the agreement mirror what's in place currently between Medfield and Walpole, and it's based on population. So with that, that population mix of the 100% of the cost for the veteran services officer and the 2 admin assistants, Walpole would pay 57% of the cost, Medfield 31%, and Sherborn 12%. That 12% amounts to about $13,700 per year. That's the budget number they would suggest that we use for FY26. They are also open to having Sherborn join for the half the year in FY25. We'd likely need to do a small reserve fund transfer to fund that, and it would be half that amount essentially for half of FY25, should you want to look at that option. Walpole Select Board is going to be discussing this option in December. Medfield has yet to have buy-in on this, so we would need to first, or we felt that the best step was to get your sense of whether you supported this avenue. If you wanted us to pursue it further, then we would, Walpole is all in. Then Walpole and Sherborn would approach Medfield and see, get their gauge for how they would like to, if they would like to support this. And then beyond that, if you'd like to pursue, is whether you would like to do it for half of the year in FY25 or begin at the beginning of FY26. So that's
All right,
summary. I'm happy to give
awesome.
more detail as questions come up.
All right, I'll take comments on the board in the order that they're presented, which is Paul first.
So I spent a fair amount of time on this packet going through all the information, and I support this, and I commend you for pursuing it and getting it to this level. The things I like about it, first of all, my number one priority is making sure that every veteran gets everything he or she should be entitled to under state and federal programs. And for that to happen, the state has made the determination that a casual veterans agent who does it on a small scale doesn't have the skills to do that. And so they have this requirement that the assistance to our veterans really requires more dedication than we have been able to do as a community so far. So if you accept that state mandate makes sense, then the best way to do it is regionalization. And this is regionalization, and it's with good communities, and it's with a good veterans agent who's got a pretty good reputation. So I see this as bringing important benefits to our veteran community. I see it complying with the requirement, because we have to have a veterans agent to take care of our vets. There's no reason why our veterans in Sherborn should be left out of these programs. And I think it makes sense that this can be built upon. So while right now there's 3 communities, I think in time it could become 4 communities, 5 communities, and so on. because you have somebody who's good and skilled there. So my reaction is, let's do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Paul. Jeff, you're up next.
Yeah, I got a stupid comment, but it's an important one. How the heck do you clone the one person for Veterans Day and Memorial Day?
Yeah, so we asked that question, and so they have a rotate. He rotates, so every other year he goes from Enfield to Walpole. But there are other, we would certainly keep all of the volunteers that do all of your great events. Diane, the effort that all of the great volunteers put in
Yeah,
would
that's
certainly be
where I'm
built
going. You
on.
think she could still stay involved even though she can't, because of her day job, she can't do the training requirements.
Right.
And this is a more cost-effective solution, but I think we want to find a way to have that personal touch with a veterans resident
Yeah.
supporting some of our, like, because as you know, I still keep the Boy Scouts marching in those parades and doing flag ceremonies on Veterans Day, but it's important to keep that too, I think. I know you know that, but I just thought I'd say it.
Definitely. Diana certainly wants to stay involved.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, especially the Veterans Day celebration. She does such a good job and so committed to it. Let's see her stay on. Absolutely.
And
Sean,
that was always timed. That's always 11, 11, 11. Like Memorial Day, you could start at different time, perhaps, but
our state reps rotate to different towns too. Stephen.
Yeah, certainly I support this, and I do commend Jeremy for finding this solution. I know how hard you've been trying to figure out how to make this work. I have one. I've been sitting here crunching the numbers, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I don't understand. Just looking at this budget draft, and I'm just looking at sort of like the end result for Walpole and Medfield. Because so we're coming in and we are representing 12% of the cost. So both Walpole and Medfield now are taking a smaller percent of the cost. And I do understand that the salaries have gone up a bit because, we're accounting for more work and also presumably more hours for the part-time assistant. But yet the Walpole and Medfield each are the cost difference to them between the fiscal 26 proposal and what they currently have budgeted for fiscal 25 is higher. I feel like us coming into this VSO shared service, it ought to reduce their cost, but it seems to have gone up significantly for them, and I'm just trying to figure out why that is, and
Yes.
because I could imagine that would be a reason why they might not actually support this.
Yeah, so that will be a discussion with Medfield. Walpole supports this, in that the change in the cost, the overall costs actually go up because there's additional help being provided under the scenario. So if Sherborn were to join, they would hire an additional part-time assistant, in addition to the current one that they have now. So there's an additional 18 hours of help to the VSO officer. That's where the costs would go up a little bit for Medfield and Walpole. The veteran services agent in Walpole has been looking for that additional help for some time, so that Walpole sees this as an opportunity to help provide that additional help with another community helping to share the cost.
Okay. Marion, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is the current agent in Walpole and Medfield, is that a full-time position?
It is, yes.
The pay is very modest, I must say, but perhaps it's a retired vet with other benefits. How
He's
how
not
is that?
retired, but he is a veteran. He's not retired. He seems very passionate, and seems excellent, to Paul's point.
An act of love, I would call it an act of love.
Yeah.
And caring.
It must be, yeah.
So kind of right the thing. What do you need from us? Do you need a vote to basically support this, or what's the ask?
Yeah, the ask is what is two. One, I'm getting the sense you're interested in pursuing this, so.
Yes.
And then the other is whether you want to try to make this happen for the second half of FY25 or to wait for FY26.
So if I could, the
What's the
answer
discussion?
to that
Yeah.
is based on whether Diana is willing to cover the gap, because January 1 is a better start. It's half a year. It's cheaper for us in the first year, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah.
But we don't want to leave any vet out in the cold. So if she's willing to find a way to make that happen, I would go with January 1.
Okay. That's when her current certification lapses. And so without the training, her current certification lapses January 1st. We could have possibly made the case to the Office of Veterans Affairs that we're working on the budget and we'd have it available in FY26 to start. But if you're willing, we certainly could do a small reserve fund transfer and start earlier.
I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I would too. That makes all kinds of sense. We should do it in 25.
Okay.
All right, Lynn, I think it sounds like actually, do you have something else to say, Marion? Otherwise, I'll collect a vote about making it on January 1.
Okay.
Any motions relative to what was just stated?
Yes, that we authorize Jeremy to proceed to put together this arrangement for effective January 1, 25.
Second.
Do I have a second? How about Jeff? Okay, all in favor. Stephen?
Aye.
Jeff?
All right.
Marion?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Might as well.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see it in the budget for FY26. Okay. Up next, consent agenda. Any motions?
Move approval of the consent agenda. There's a minor typo on the minutes of September 19th, but Diane's aware of it and she assures me that she'll fix it.
I'll make the correction tomorrow.
So the idea is to move approval, she'll fix the typo. It's not a material change of meaning type of typo. It's just spelling.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jeff?
All right.
Marion?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Might as well. Any select board reports? What town administrator reports?
Thank you, Eric. I have a handful and I'll go through them fairly quickly. One that's not on here, I wanted to give a thanks to our fire department. They've been quite busy. Hopefully this rain will slow that down a little bit. They've been not only responding to some forest fires in Sherborn, there's been a handful, but also helping mutual aid throughout the region. So thanks to them, and hopefully they'll get some rest with the current weather.
Well, you can also, I would interrupt you, but they're also having a Thanksgiving lunch on, I think, Saturday. Is it Saturday at 1 p.m., I believe? They didn't make a public service announcement because I know Thursdays they're a training night often, but I think let me check. I think the fire department is hosting at St. Teresa's a turkey lunch this weekend. Hang on
Is it
no
public or sign up for it?
It's a week is it a week? No, hang on a second. Do you know, Diane? Yeah, so it's Sunday, November 24th at 1 p.m. The fire department is hosting a turkey lunch at St. Teresa's Church, Sunday at 1 p.m.
Do you have to sign up for it?
You don't need to RSVP. You can just show up.
What'd you say, Jeremy?
I hear that the public can just show up. You don't need to make plans in advance.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. No RSVP required. Exactly right. I just thought we should, if there's not many people left here, but it's sounded like we should support them.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Frank?
got
All
his
right,
hand up. Frank, are you gonna add something?
I think that was the police department that was doing the turkey dinner.
That's
think it
not
was-
what I saw, but I may be wrong.
Well, the notice I saw said the police department anyway.
Okay, I may be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, a few other updates on the Sherborn 350 time capsule. They're looking for some ideas for submission to put into the time capsule by Thanksgiving. We've provided, just for your awareness, we've provided some pictures of the roundabout and the ceremony around that. The Welcome to Sherborn document, there's like that booklet pamphlet will be in. The citations from the House and the Senate will be in. There'll be a number of other things as well, but wanted to just make you folks aware. If you think it's not a very big box, but if you think of anything else that might be fun to include in the time capsule, please reach out and I can help get those things included. They're trying to have sort of the whole list together before Thanksgiving. The actual event of actual digging and the event of the time capsule is in December, but they're trying to get the contents sort of situated by Thanksgiving. A few other reports. The Green Communities annual report was submitted. I was able to put that together and submitted that. On December 5th, we'll need to apply for a municipal vulnerability preparedness grant. This is a planning grant to be eligible to receive future implementation funds. Sherborn's on the list of communities that need to do a 2.0 or MVP 2.0 process, which would be funded through a grant we'd apply for to get $45,000 to help with a consultant to build on the 1.0 that we did previously to continue to be eligible for that those grants. Sustainability coordinator, which would help with both the MVP and the green communities going forward. The IMA with Holliston's fully signed, the select board and both communities fully signed. We're getting ready to do a job posting, job advertisement, and we're tweaking the job description with some input from Holliston's HR director to clarify some of the reporting structure and the duties. So that's moving full steam ahead now. Director of assessing with Wendy's resignation, and we've posted that. The position's been posted for some time now. We've gotten 4 applicants. 2 seem quite good, and we're scheduling some interviews with those 2 applicants along with the chair of the Board of Assessors, Diane and I, and we'll kind of use that as our initial screening process and take it from there. We did just receive another PFAS exceedance for the November testing results for the town campus water supply. Came in at 22 parts per trillion, but that's over the 20 part current regulations of 20 parts per trillion. Nothing further we need to do there. Just wanted to raise that for awareness. It is trending over the current limits there, but we're moving on with the design and permitting of the treatment and to be funded hopefully with ARPA funds and also a grant. And final announcement is that we received word today that Sherborn's received an ADA improvement grant from the Mass Offices of Disability. This $50,000 grant will fund a self-assessment and help put together a transition plan that would address any deficiencies that are found during the self-assessment. So those are my updates.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
I was gonna add one thing, Eric. Frank is right. It's the police department. I looked it up. It's fostering the.
Is it on the web somewhere? Is it like on the Facebook page or
I
something?
got an email from the police department. I think. I don't know why.
We'll make sure it's up on the town website.
But it's 1 p.m. Sunday at St. Teresa's Church, but it wasn't the fire department. It's indeed the police department that's hosting it.
Okay.
So can I ask a question of Jeremy?
Yeah.
Jeremy, you mentioned the ARPA funds, and we're rapidly approaching the deadline.
Yeah.
Making sure those funds are committed and being put to use. Are there any dangling funds out there, the ARPA funds, that we should put to use?
So at your last meeting or the meeting before, you did fully commit all of the ARPA funds. So based on your prior commitments, no, there are not. However, as noted at your last meeting, Sean and I did receive word from Mass DEP that we were eligible for another grant that could help fund PFAS treatment. That's in addition to the other one that we talked about, which could be used towards work over at Woodhaven Leland. So there's an opportunity. We're still getting some more. This is kind of late breaking, but there's an opportunity possibly for you folks to recommit some of the ARPA funds that would have gone to Woodhaven Leland and use it for some other use. And you could do that in December. There is a possibility you could recommit about $170,000 worth of water treatment funds towards some other infrastructure, say roadway improvements. But we don't have the details yet to give that to you. That would be, I envision that would be the only tweak that we would need to make to ARPA by the end of the calendar year.
So I'm counting, and I'm sure the board is counting on you to keep track of this and make sure that come the end, when the clock runs out, there is not a penny that we've left on the table.
Agreed.
That we've used everything we have, everything that we got. Because if we don't, it's gone.
Marion?
Right, in that spirit, I'm trying to recall whether we had a list of prioritized projects that were lined up as first in line if we had more money. Do we have such a list ready to go? And should we be, if we don't, shouldn't we have one just in case?
Well, I would suggest that, I mean, an easy lift, given the presentation tonight, based on the needs for your roadways, would be to commit whatever we have available, if we find any that is available after this new grant, to roadway repairs. It's an existing capital need that you would need to fund otherwise. That was just my suggestion, but
that sounds very reasonable to me.
You know, at the end of it, we're finally putting toward things we'd buy anyway. All right.
I'm trying to make you smile, Eric.
Yeah, right.
Everyone got on board when there's 10 grand left. All right. So I guess that's everything with the town administrator updates. I think most people know the Phoenix Partner things has a lot to do with Coolidge Street. So I'm recusing myself off that. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for allowing this to be last. I'm going to step out of this meeting. So with that, I just want to make sure wish everyone on the board and at this meeting a happy Thanksgiving. I probably won't see many people before then, and great holidays in general, and have a good one. I'll hand it off to Stephen. Thank you, Steve.
And thanks.
Thanks,
Happy
Thank you, Eric.
Thanksgiving to you too.
Not letting me out.
All right. So for the final item on the agenda, is the discussion of the Phoenix Partners Global Proposal. Marion has composed this sort of like summary of where things stand. For anybody who isn't aware, there have been a couple of sort of public meetings or sort of forums that Bob Murchison has presented on July 15th, 2024. He presented essentially this proposal for the first time in a formal public manner at a select board meeting. And then on October 23rd, had a public forum that was a hybrid meeting at the town hall, which was sort of moderated by the town moderator, Mike Jamo. And so there was discussion between the public and Bob during that meeting. And so now this meeting is the first time that the select board has had an opportunity to basically discuss this proposal in a public meeting as a board. So I don't know if Marion, if you want to summarize your summary or just assume that anybody who is interested has already looked at the packet and has read the summary.
Well, I'm assuming the select board has had a chance to look at the summary. It's fairly short. I thought that it might be in a public packet, but it was not. So today I shared it with Bob Murchison because he sure has a right to see it. And I put it together really because I thought it was fair to Bob and fair to everybody to sort of get down as a benchmark of our discussions with Bob, which have been going on for a while now, to get a benchmark document down that has a date and we can refer to. It doesn't mean that we're making any decisions. It's just a matter of having a report of what the select board has discussed so far. And all these discussions up to now really have been in public meeting. So the main purpose is to summarize what the select board comments were at the last public meeting. And I'll try to I'll share my screen and then I'll just go quickly through the document. I won't read the whole thing. Almost everybody here will be very familiar with what I'm talking about. So I will do that, but just to say up front, the purpose here is not to take any sort of official vote of the select board, but just to get a sense of whether the select board has a general consensus about where it stands right now. And that's for our own benefit, as well as Bob's and the public's benefit. So I think it's better to kind of say in advance that this isn't to open it up to rehashing all the comments, and especially, I know Bob will want to respond to this, but recall, Bob, that we've heard your proposal and your rationale and your policy positions several times now, so we don't need to go through that again. But this is mainly a select board discussion. I want to just point that out right in the beginning. So I will share my screen. And hold on a minute, share. Here we go. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Right. The first part of this little document I put together is just a summary of Murchison's proposal and where it stands now. Basically, for anyone, the public that's here that hasn't heard this already, there were the 5 40B proposals involved. 3 of those would be withdrawn, and the parcels developed under local zoning and regulations. The big picture, of course, is that Mr. Murchison wants to make a deal whereby 4 of the 40B proposals are changed either to just regular local zoning developments, or 1 being reduced in size. That's the Brush Hill development. But all of this is dependent on Project 5, the 40-unit, 100% deeply affordable apartment building on Coolidge Street, to be fully supported by the select board, which I believe is meant by Bob to be a local initiative project, a vote by the select board to make it a local initiative project. Of course, dependent on water and sewer infrastructure from Coolidge and the other 2 Coolidge Street developments that we're all very familiar with now. Let me move the talking heads out of the way here. Oh, sorry. I think I just lost the share. There it is. Okay. So in exchange for this full-throated approval of the 40B 40-unit apartment complex on Coolidge Street, which would be in addition to the two developments already being considered by Toll Brothers and considered years ago by these boards. In exchange, we would formally approve the 108 Coolidge Street 40-unit apartment building. And the rest of the 40Bs, the other four, three of the other four would be developed under local rules. And also that the town administrator would mediate any disagreements between the regulatory boards and Mr. Murchison. So the rest is history. July 15th and October 23rd, we had two meetings in which Bob presented his ideas, and various members of the town reacted. On October 23rd, three of the four eligible members of the select board weighed in, and the following is just a summary of what was said by the select board during that meeting. I think first, the select board fully supported development of affordable and diverse housing options and recognized that it's very difficult to do anywhere in Sherborn. If we do get water and sewer on Coolidge Street, that would make it a potentially better place to put denser housing and potentially denser low-income development housing as well. So the bottom line is whatever we do has to be done without compromising public health and our water supplies. So I reminded Bob and informed everyone that we've been working on getting infrastructure in place for the two housing developments, the 40B and EA that were previously approved or considered and rezoned. But we don't yet have the water and sewer in place. And I emphasize that many of the prerequisites haven't been met. We don't yet know whether the developer is going to commit to those two projects. The developer, Toll Brothers, if they do commit, will install the water and sewer at great expense. There are other approvals that we still don't have. The water and sewer district legislation is on track to get approved, but it's not done yet. We still have MWRA water extension and the other paperwork that goes along with that, including interbasin transfer approvals. And most importantly, we don't yet have IMAs agreed with either Natick or Framingham. So the current candidate developer on whom all of this depends is not yet committed. And I emphasize that until that commitment is made and these other agreements are in place, it's not wise for the select board to create a situation in which we're pushing yet another project. On the other hand, it's understood that we are not voting, we have never voted, and I don't think today would vote to be totally against the possibility of this extra 40B comprehensive permit process or this additional development in any case. If such a permit were, if a comprehensive permit were awarded by the zoning board, it could be contingent on the water and sewer infrastructure and capacity. So that is certainly still a possibility. And once the infrastructure is in place, the water and sewer capacity, if excess water and sewer is available, which it probably would be, could be allocated to the approved project. That would have to be done by the Water and Sewer District Commission. And so it would not be a decision of the select board in any case. So regarding projects that may be developed under local bylaws and regulations, well, two of the projects have already been changed to a local bylaw and regulation process. And in any case, those can go forward as Bob plans and submits to the regulatory boards. The select board will certainly not stand in the way of that. But of course, as always in Sherborn, the quantity and quality of water resources will be critical to those, as they always are to every development. And we emphasize that the regulations are under the authority of the regulatory boards. The select board or town administrator doesn't administer those regulations. And the town administrator doesn't put his hand on the scale, but certainly can provide information and advice. So if controversies arise regarding the rules and regulations of the town, the rules and regs can be changed if so justified. And but that also is not up to the select board. And finally, Paul made a statement that the select board really supports and appreciates the effort of the regulatory board members. So that pretty much summarizes it. And I'll stop share if that's okay with everybody. And we'll see if
Yes.
you have comments on this statement. The question is, are you comfortable with this statement? Is it a consensus?
Thanks, Marion. Paul, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to say two things. One, I support the statement. I think it's excellent. Two, I commend both Marion and Stephen for that forum, the way you handle it, and the there were a lot of issues that came up that needed to be addressed and were addressed. And the third point is I want to reiterate how important it is to our town that there be volunteers who come forward and are willing to serve on boards and committees, and that the 40B issues that have been affecting our town has got us involved in some lawsuits and some disagreements, sometimes heated. And so every volunteer should understand and appreciate how much the Board of Selectmen supports and appreciate the efforts of those volunteers that serve on our regulatory boards. We understand you're on the front line of many of the issues that confront the community. And truly, we have your back. So I just wanted to emphasize that to any and all volunteers who might be listening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bob.
I guess I would, I am interested in Jeff and Paul, sort of your general position or thoughts on the overall proposal that Bob has put forth. I mean, we've had several months to think about it, so I don't really know where either of you stand on it. So I will be giving my sort of perspective on it as well, but I'm interested to hear what you both think.
You want to go first, Paul, or you kind of did go first, I guess, or you?
Well, I don't want to, hog it. So it's almost would be fair if Stephen said what he thought first, because he's been a leader on this issue and has put a lot of time on it. But if you want to go, Jeff, that's.
Oh, I'm fine with having Stephen go first. I don't really have that much to say. We've talked about it at all these forums, and Bob has talked to all of us individually, so I'm in favor of it. But I'm willing to hear what you say, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, my general position is that if Bob is going to build this 40 unit light tech project, which he said multiple times is his primary goal, I do believe that Coolidge is a logical location for it. Should there be a municipal and water and sewer supply there, which obviously there isn't yet. But still, that is the logical place for it. And certainly, my general position would be that the select board should not do anything to stand in the way of that. It has struck me as a little bit unusual from the beginning to be calling it a local initiative project because it's not really, right. The town didn't initiate it, right. Bob initiated it. So unlike the other projects on Coolidge where the town did actually approach Ben Stevens, and essentially from the very beginning the town has been involved in trying to get that project done. The Bob's project is entirely his own initiative, and he is now sort of after the fact just asking for town support on it, and I can understand his perspective on that. On the other side, it's the question of what he's offering is essentially to pull back I guess three of his other four 40B projects, which he's already more or less in the process of doing. I think that we have told Bob, in our private meetings in the beginning that, essentially everything that he's proposing, he can do on his own without the select board's approval or support anyways. And that goes for both, building his LIHTC on Coolidge and also, seeking to build by right on according to town bylaws and regulations on his other parcels. He can do all of that anyways. And again, the select board, I believe, doesn't plan to and shouldn't do anything to stand in the way of any of that. In terms of what would we need or want to actually formally support his project as a local initiative project? I think one of the big hurdles is that, again, the town is not building or funding the water and sewer infrastructure. That's entirely being funded by a private developer, Toll Brothers. Well, hopefully Toll Brothers. And, their stance from the beginning, and they've been unwavering, is that Mr. Murchison needs to if he wants to tie into it when it's being constructed, that he needs to pay a pro rata share according to whatever formula. I believe it's based on bedroom count, in terms of a percentage of the overall project that's being supplied by the infrastructure. And so I think that would be basically a requirement up front, would be a commitment from Bob to essentially pay that pro rata share to Toll Brothers. And I know that might be a stopping point for him. And I can say that, I have tried talking to Toll Brothers about it and seeing if they'll move off of that position, and thus far they have not. And I mean, it is a little bit out of our hands on that front. And then on the other side, in terms of the building by right on his other parcels with the regulatory boards, one of my concerns, of course, is that Bob, has had, pretty well-known and public disagreements with the regulatory boards about how they apply the regulations to his projects. And I think, as Paul alluded to in the public forum in October, ultimately, I believe that the select board is going to support the town's regulatory boards and committees. That's what we're going to do. And I lack the technical expertise to be able to mediate and say, oh no, I believe that our regulatory boards are incorrect here. And I am just by default going to be supporting our regulatory boards. And my concern is that Bob may decide that if the regulatory boards are not ruling in a way that he's pleased with, that constitutes, the town not holding up our end of the bargain, and then therefore he may just choose to go back to his 40Bs on these parcels. And that's the challenge for me, is figuring out how to come up with some kind of an actual agreement. Again, like what Paul has been saying from the very beginning, it's like, well, we need some kind of a legal document where, that lays out what is being given and what is being, offered and received. And we signed our names on this piece of paper. And I have trouble imagining what that document will actually look like and how enforceable it would be on both ends. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like, yes, I believe that the proposal that Bob has put before us, that is, a favorable outcome essentially for the town, better than the option of everything going back to a 40B. It's just a matter of the nuts and bolts and realistically how to make that happen.
Yeah, Steve, my hand's up. You probably didn't see it.
Oh yes, go ahead, Marion.
Yeah, thank you for putting that much more clearly than I even could read my own document. But I do want to add that I feel like this is going to play out, governed by, once again, the water and the water resources of the town and the concerns of public health that we have. So it really is a matter of how urgent is this request? What will happen if we do nothing? If the select board does nothing, and that's what we're doing in this case, Bob is right. We're not taking a stand or making an agreement or drawing up a legal document that can be signed by all. And I think it's appropriate that we do not, because ultimately the water and sewer capacity of the land is going to dictate what can be done on all of those properties, except the Coolidge Street property. And, what the land can support, according to our regulatory boards, is basically, I think, okay with me. As long as he follows the rules, he can do whatever project that he dreams up that falls within our rules and regs. Or if it's a 40B, if the 40B is scaled down to where it does work with the water resources that we have, then so be it. That's fine. I'm not against 40Bs categorically, but they just cannot compromise our public health. And as far as the urgency of the Coolidge Street apartment, the urgency is sort of an artificial one, because with patience, if the Toll Brothers deal goes through and we get our IMAs in place and all the other paperwork is done, which we hope will happen, and the Toll Brothers project goes ahead, Toll Brothers, will step back, and the authority will then sit with the Water and Sewer District Commission, the 5-member commission. Hopefully that's not too many years in the future, but it's certainly not a matter of weeks or months in the future. When all of that is in place, and then the legislation really kicks in, the Water and Sewer District will be obliged to give excess capacity to any project that is approved by local boards. In the case of the apartment, it would be the zoning board. And I would guess that if everything else is in place, that the zoning board would be happy to support a comprehensive permit. I can't say that, I'm not on the zoning board, but it could go ahead. It's a matter of timing. So I think we just have to step back and let the process play out.
Thanks, Mary. Jeff and Paul, do you guys have anything you want to say?
Those are all good comments. I think it's well stated, including yours, Stephen. I think it's, we obviously showed some support for it too by holding those public forums as you described, so that we're helping educate the voters as well.
I guess it's my turn.
Sure, go ahead, Paul.
So everything I'm going to say, I've said before. So my position hasn't changed. Number one, I'm very open to the proposal made because it leads to a better result than not following his proposal. I think we need to recognize that we need affordable housing in the town. It's not only a state obligation, but we need it so that we have diversity in the community, that people who work in the town can get housing in the town, that our sons and daughters can live in the town. And I think we're all committed to achieving that goal of affordable housing. I would also say my third point would be that it's much better to work with a developer who's a resident of the town and who's invested in the town and who cares about the town. And the fourth point would be patience is the key here to making this deal work. What I heard at the forum was a great deal of impatience. Let's get this done. We need to get this done. But it has to follow its own timeline because it's out of our control. So sometimes those of us who are farmers know that you have to let the crops grow. And there's not much that you can do, no matter how much yelling and whatever you do, you're not going to make it grow any faster. And so this whole issue of the affordable housing in the town needs to go patiently to its maturity. It's not possible. So the next point I want to make is that the message from the forum was that it's not possible for the board to do this deal at this time because essentially the intermunicipal agreements are not in place, the developers not in place, and so on. That for those pieces to happen is going to take time. So again, patience. My message to Bob Murchison is patience. Be patient. And I think everything will come to a acceptable result for everyone. And then the last point that I've made it many times before, is that I think we need to work towards a written contract. First of all, I'm comfortable as a lawyer with written contracts. But secondly, if you just have vague words about people proposing to do this and saying that they're going to do that, you never know whether they actually are going to do it, when they're going to do it, and when do you do your part, before they do their part or after they do their part. It's all very confused and hazy, and it should be very clear, step by step, chronologically, who does what when to get to where we are, where we want to be. So that's my position. It's been my position now for a while. But again, the reply that I have for Bob Murchison and his proposal is be patient. We can't do it now, but be patient. Give us the time. We're working on it. We have the best of the community working on it, trying to make things happen. Just be patient. Thanks.
Thanks. I guess, Paul, I agree with you that in the wanting a contract, wanting details and specifics. My question to you would be what do you see as sort of like the timeline for that relative to the district actually passing through the legislation and us getting IMAs with Natick and Framingham, et cetera, like where my question, I guess, is what is the process by which we start actually hammering out details about, okay, well, Bob Murchison has approached the town and wants to come up with this agreement. Well, somebody needs to make the agreement, right? So when and how do we start that process?
That process should start today and continue. I mean, for example, we don't have the legislation yet, but that doesn't mean doing nothing. It means there's a paragraph in an agreement that says if there's no legislation, here's what happens. If the legislation passes, here's what the next step, here's what we agree would be the next step. And similarly, if we don't have IMAs, we don't have to take the position that we'll do nothing until we have IMAs. IMAs are intermunicipal agreements, for any listener who might not know what that meant. You put a paragraph in there that says that when there's no IMA, here's what happens. When you have IMA, here's the next steps the parties agree that they will work towards. And you try and have a timeline based on the events that were identified at the forum that are necessary events. So you measure it from there. If you're waiting on getting an IMA, then you have events measured in terms of that happening or that not happening. So it's not like you're saying, March 1 of X year, this is going to happen. No, like a period of time after an IMA is signed, this will happen or that will happen. The beauty of such an agreement is that it gives expectations to both sides, so that one of the messages I heard from Bob at the forum is that he doesn't feel like anything's happening. He doesn't feel like we're making any progress. There's so much that needs to be done. And an agreement would put us on track so that he knows things are happening. And there's a commitment there to make an effort to make things happen. And so it only leaves patience. And I know developers that put money into buying property and investing in property and investing in designs, and they'd like to realize the profits. They'd like to liquidate that investment and move on to other things. But sometimes like corn growing in a field, you just gotta let it mature, and then when the corn's ready for harvest, it's ready for harvest. The message that we're trying to give in this report that Marion presented today is that the crop is growing, that things are happening, that we're working on things. That's all good.
Thanks, Marion. Yes.
Yeah, I think I get Paul. I get your position, Paul. I can see the advantage for all of us to have a timeline laid out for the Coolidge Street, 108 Coolidge Street, Bob's apartment proposal for Coolidge Street. I definitely can see the advantage of that. For the others, they are moving targets. You know, they're Bob's trying out other possibilities under local bylaws, which he has every right to do. But you know, we don't know where that's going to end up. For right now, the only one that we know is still definitely a 40B is the Brush Hill Road. The others may not be by Bob's decision. That's his thinking. He's totally has every right to try out different ideas on these different properties he has. So in a way, it's all about the Coolidge Street apartment. And I think we could lay out a timeline for that. The reason I don't think I'm ready to sit down and write, if, you know, if this goes through, then we'll do that. If so-and-so, you know, what all the steps are toward getting that apartment, even though in the end, I think it would be a good thing, is that the fact of our going into that process and promoting that apartment being done in the future on a longer timeline, we want to make sure it doesn't compromise the decision of the developer who's considering the Coolidge Street projects. And that for me is the kicker. I think once Toll Brothers has explicitly and on paper committed to doing those projects, then we'll be in a better position to make that timeline dependent on whether we get an IMA from Natick, Framingham, and also, as I pointed out at the meeting, the IMA with Natick has been a little more difficult because they're concerned about all that addition of housing right on their Speen Street traffic corridor. So I agree with your approach, Paul, wholeheartedly, but I don't think we're quite there yet. When we know that the water and sewer infrastructure is on the road to getting done, then it will be time to put those timelines in place. I agree with that.
Thanks, Marion. I guess Paul and Jeff, how do you feel about, I mean, my position of if we are being asked to support Bob's project on Coolidge from the get-go, that one of the conditions be that essentially he contribute towards the cost of the water and sewer infrastructure, essentially according to the Toll Brothers calculations. So that on the one end, and then on the back end, in terms of if there is to be some sort of a disagreement or dispute about the rulings of the town's regulatory boards with regards to his other projects, how to resolve that. I don't know if you have any opinions about that, because that, I don't know, to me that starts getting legal.
Yeah, complicated. I mean, I definitely think the former, the commitment to fund a pro rata share of the infrastructure is important. The question, I think even Bob supports that. It's the question of the timing, it seems like to me. So I don't know how that, but we're sort of, as Paul said, we've got the cart way before the horse here. We don't even know if Toll Brothers is gonna, commit or not. They went through Mary and I started talking to him, where it was 3 years ago, I think, Mary, and
Oh,
we hadn't even
it
hired
is.
Jeremy yet, 4 years ago. So, we still don't know if they're definitely gonna go ahead with it. Or at least I guess I should say, I don't know. Maybe someone does.
Yeah, so, a legal deal at this point just seems premature to me, because we really can't do it intelligently until we have those basic building blocks in place on which to build it.
The, the reason why I said, start now was because it opens the door to a continuing dialogue, a friendly, courteous, respectful dialogue, as opposed to an angry guy who feels like he has to sue to get anywhere and feels left out and excluded, and so on and so on. The process of negotiating the deal basically involves him and just has the calming, it has a calming effect and a healthy effect, because there's communication. It's an ongoing communication. And when I say negotiating a deal, I don't mean like we pick up the phone and half an hour later we have a deal and we're going to be signing a deal. I'm envisioning negotiations that will go however long it takes for all these other pieces to play out. So we might be talking 3 months worth of negotiations. We might be talking 6 months worth of negotiations. It's just a form of communication.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Paul. Absolutely. I think that is a right track to take. My worry about starting to negotiate a deal now is that it could compromise what we're trying to negotiate with Toll Brothers.
Right, I defer to you entirely on that. But I was quite moved by Bob's statement when he withdrew his application by saying he feels completely excluded from the town. And since he's working on housing, having him have a dialogue with us that's a little more formal is healthier for the town. That's all. It's not.
No, that basic point is well taken. I get it.
Toll Brothers is easily distracted. They're opportunistic. They swoop in where they see there's a good deal. I'm not sure we'll ever have a deal with them. It has been years. It's been very frustrating. It has been years.
Well, I'm more optimistic about that, but I don't know, when we'll feel secure enough to, move ahead with, I just, your suggestion, your advice to give it more time, I think is what we really need. Things are moving along, and I think it could be that in a couple of months, this is a much easier decision to make. So let's just give it some time.
Yes, that's why I was saying patience. Patience to Bob, patience to us. A sort of a lowering of the heat of the rhetoric towards more patience all around.
And I mean, I also agree, Paul, with your sort of point that I don't want Bob to feel like we are ignoring him or delaying or being dismissive of him. It is, I think that Bob is, frustrated with how slow the wheels of government turn, and I mean, it's just the nature of this beast that we're in, right? But I do want to feel like that there is a dialogue and that we're trying to work towards something with him. I think that for me, in terms of the concerns about Toll Brothers and their thus far lack of commitment, I think that's part of the reason why it is important that upfront that Bob contributes the share that Toll Brothers is looking for. I think that would help to secure their commitment to doing this project, right? If they know that there's a sum of money that is coming towards them to help defray their costs. I guess so far Bob has been both silent and camera off, but I would be interested to hear from you, Bob, in terms of what your thoughts are on that stipulation up front of paying Toll Brothers their pro rata share.
Well, I guess I heard at the beginning of this conversation that Marion didn't think I should be speaking tonight, so I'm a little.
No, I just wanted to
I'm
make
not.
sure
I'm
that
not sure I want to answer specific questions and then be told to sit down and shut up. Either I participate or I don't. Would be, Stephen, I think that would be fair. The answer to the question about I have offered previously to pay for the infrastructure, and that conversation, I've said this many times. I offered to pay for the infrastructure, and I was ignored, basically. At this point, you have written legislation that says that if there's excess capacity, someone can come along and connect to the infrastructure, and there is no requirement for payment. So, I guess you can have your attorneys take another look at the legislation. I've had my attorney look at the legislation, and I'm pretty comfortable that that's what it says. However, I'm still willing to have a conversation about paying for the infrastructure. But I can tell you, if you read your own legislation, it says that the excess capacity can be used by a developer and plug and play. That's what it says. And I didn't write the legislation. In fact, I opposed certain aspects of the legislation. But you can be sure I read it very carefully, and that's what it says. So, for you to ask me tonight, Stephen, well, will you pay for the infrastructure? Are you offering me a deal? I'm not going to negotiate with myself. You want to come and say, yeah, I like your deal. I'll do your deal. Then you can say, I mean, that's what a negotiation is, right? You come and say, okay, we read your deal, but the only way we want to do it is if you pay X, Y, Z. Okay, you want to have that negotiation, let's have it. But you can't just, I'm not going to negotiate against myself here. I think I've said enough on that topic. The only other thing I would want to say about your discussion, or not about your discussion, but about your seemingly decision to what I'll graciously call kicking the can down the road. A conversation that we started. It was long, actually, before June that we started the conversation. It was more like almost a year ago, June, when we first began that conversation. But in a weird way, your not accepting this offer is good for me, because you're giving all of the decisions back to me. And I will go forward and I will make the best decisions in the interest of the goals I'm trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, you're giving that choice back to me. And you're right, the choices are not all mine. The choices beyond mine will be at the Housing Appeals Committee. It's pretty obvious that the Zoning Board of Appeals is constituted in such a way that pretty much they deny all 40B, all affordable housing projects. And that, they're an appointed board by you, and they make their decisions. And then almost 100% of the time, they get appealed to the Housing Appeals Committee. So what you're left with is a whole series of projects where, if you don't work with me and collaborate with me, where I get to make the decisions and the Housing Appeals Committee makes the decisions, and you don't end up having much say. And that's better for me. I'm offering, in a weird way, and I do think Paul's point is a good one. I'm different because I live in the town. This offer of a compromise comes more out of my living in town and the interpersonal angst that goes along with all of this, the emotional stuff, right? That's why I wanted to get on board with you. The outcome, my ability to kind of navigate and do what I think is in the best interest of my goals. And by the way, I've said many, many times, those goals are not necessarily about maximizing the profit. Yes, it's a for-profit business, but the goals are beyond that. And I've talked a lot about that, and I won't go on about that. But you're going to allow me to make all the choices in achieving those goals. You're giving up a say in it all. If you do a deal, you get a say. If you don't do a deal, you don't get a say. You have to live with what I decide and what the Housing Appeals Committee decides. And it's not good for the town. And anyway, that's kind of, those are my thoughts. And I respect your decision. You have every right to make a decision to let it all play out in front of the ZBA and ultimately in front of the Housing Appeals Committee or in front of the regulatory boards. I will correct you, Marion. You said that pretty much 2 of the 40Bs had gone away. That's not really true. One of them has gone away. Greenwood is no longer a 40B, obviously. Whether Farm Road continues to be a 40B remains to be seen. I am working on by right development of that property, absolutely. And if and when the permitting is successful for by right, then I'll make a decision about whether to do the 40B or do the by right. I think it should be pretty obvious. I wouldn't be spending the money on the by right permitting if I wasn't serious about going forward with that type of plan. But by no means has the opportunity for the 40B on Farm Road gone away. But I really feel like you're giving up the opportunity to have a say in all of this, and that's disappointing to me. And last thing, Paul, your point about what I'll call papering an agreement, and I've said this before, is a very good one. Of course, we want to paper it, but again, you don't paper an agreement before you have an agreement. And Paul, you're an attorney. You do that all the time. When people come to an agreement, then attorneys help them paper it. And I am more than willing to go through it. But I don't sit here and negotiate away and, oh yeah, I'll pay for the infrastructure. I'll do this, I'll do that. While you sit there and say, yeah, I don't know. That's not the way you negotiate. I spent 50 years, 40 years negotiating, and that's not how you do it. You don't negotiate with yourself. So Stephen, if you want the answer to whether I'll pay for my pro rata share of the infrastructure, tell me that you'll support the project if I do, and then you'll get your answer. Is that fair? I mean, if you think that's unreasonable, Stephen, tell me. But to me, that's intuitive.
I mean, Bob, I think that was essentially my position, is that I support I support your proposal if you pay Toll Brothers request for the pro rata share. I don't know that the other three select board members
Fair
share
enough.
that full opinion, but
Fair enough.
that's
Well,
why
I certainly appreciate you saying that. But again, the answer comes when you're ready to do a deal, and you can't do the deal. It sounds like you would, which I'm grateful for your support of that concept. I've said multiple times that I'm willing to have that discussion, but I'm not, because it's not required by law, I'm not wanting to have that conversation until you guys are ready to go forward with support of the project. And I don't think your colleagues on the board are ready to do that. And as it sounds like maybe you are.
let's hear from Marion.
All right, tell us what you mean by support of the project, Bob.
Well, I think I've said it before. It would be a
You know,
lip.
it's the zoning board that makes decisions on 40Bs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
And
think he
that's why
means he just
I
wants
used-
us to formally support his Coolidge LIHTC as a local initiative project.
That's right. I asked for your support. I
Yeah.
didn't ask for your comprehensive permit. You don't issue the comprehensive permit.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear if you support the project with a lip that the comprehensive permit will be issued. Frankly, it's not clear to me how the comprehensive permit can be denied anyway. But if you support it, then I think clearly the comprehensive permit is likely to be issued. But I'm not asking for you to issue the permit. That's not the law. The law is
Right.
if you want to support it as a local initiative project, and just, I know you know this, Marion, but so everyone else knows it, you have no obligation to put up any money because you're supporting the project. Many towns would actually put some money up to support a project like this, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking for your what I've characterized as full-throated support, which would include it being a lip, and it would include standing firm that the project would be allocated the excess capacity of the water and sewer, which is the legislation says shall. So I don't even think I need your support for that because the legislation says shall. And I think all the lawyers in the room at least know what the word shall means.
Right. Can I just respond to that? I understand fully that you want us to support it as a lip, and you want it now. I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, so I'm really going to quit after this last input. As long as we think it's possible that full-throated support of your 40B project on Coolidge might compromise Toll Brothers' decision or the IMA with Natick, it's not wise for us to do that now. But if you can wait, have some patience, it could be that further down the road, we might be able to do that. But I'm not willing to stand up and do that now because I am fully committed to getting this infrastructure in place.
I mean, I fully understand that, Marion, and obviously we've disagreed on it and we'll stay in disagreement. What I would say about your asking for patience is that the things that I have offered, okay, in return, right, the massive reduction in density on the other projects, my decision-making about that can't wait. In other words, I will make those decisions as they are necessary to make. Does that make sense to you? So as time passes,
okay.
yeah,
That's
so
okay.
as time passes, the benefits to me of having you do the lip uh, include benefits on the other projects, right? And as time passes, those benefits diminish in value to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but in my mind, those other projects are going to be limited by the water and sewer conditions on the site. Each of those sites has its own conditions that
Well,
will
certainly that's true
put
under
a
the
natural
local,
limitation.
certainly that's true under the local regulations. I agree. Under the 40B, as you know, there's, you can build 32 homes on Farm Road under the state regulations. And, ultimately that's a decision for the Housing Appeals Committee. I fully understand that. But I'm confident that the Housing Appeals Committee will ultimately see it that way if we go there. So
Yeah.
the
And
town doesn't get to make the decisions anymore.
no, Title V will make the decision.
That is correct, absolutely. Well, the Housing Appeals Court and potentially the Superior Court in the case of Title V.
Right.
We're
So that
the
still
Board of
is-
Health to deny that Title V permit, which they have not done yet. But those various judicial venues will make those decisions. The town loses the ability to make the decision. That's the whole point of 40B.
Bob, I guess I have one question for you also, is
Sure.
that on that other end, on your other parcels where you are building by right, you know, when we reach these impasses where you and the regulatory boards have a disagreement over how they are ruling on your requests, I mean, I guess then the question becomes, right, well, how do we resolve that?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Because that, to me, that's that is a challenge on that end in terms of,
Yeah.
the two parties disagreeing. And as I told you, as a select board, we are going to support our town's boards and committees,
Well,
and
I would argue that you should only support the town's boards and committees to the extent they are following the law. And if you make a decision as a board that they're not following you should not follow them willy-nilly if they are not following the law. And then you should make a decision that's in the best interest of the town, not of the individuals who are not following the law. The other thing I would say, Stephen, just to correct, you keep alluding to that I have difficulties with regulatory boards. And what I would say is that there's only one regulatory board in town that I have difficulty with. At the Conservation Commission, we have spirited conversations, but I've never been denied anything that I'm trying to do by the Conservation Commission. And the reason for that is I don't come in with aggressive proposals vis-a-vis the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. I actually work very, very hard, as a developer should, to not need a whole lot from the Conservation Commission. So when you say, that I have difficulty with boards, it's a board. And I think that's pretty straightforward. I have great relationships with all of the other regulatory aspects of the town, with the exception of the Board of Health. So it's one board is the issue. It's a very important board, of course, but it is one board. It's not multiple boards. I mean, the ZBA obviously has denied my 40B projects. And, we've had to go into litigation, unfortunately, on that. And in one case, they denied it based on, an issue that's already been adjudicated fairly quickly, as you know, in the favor of the project. But I don't feel the ZBA makes the decisions they make, and as long as you're willing to pay for the outcomes, the things that happen after the ZBA makes these decisions, then that's up to you. But the ZBA follows a process that is understandable. I don't often agree with the outcomes, but they do have a professional process that they follow that one can navigate. So I'll leave it at that.
Marion?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think this has been a good exchange, Bob. I hope you
Great.
agree. And I really appreciate whatever the select board has said here. I propose that we simply leave it at that. And if you are comfortable with the summary that I made of that forum that we had, and that's what it is, then I'm willing to leave it at that. I certainly don't think there's any vote to be taken here, at least not in my view. So
If are you asking for my response or
no.
No, okay.
But you can hear from the rest of the board. I know you'll have a response, Bob. I know you will always have a good
Well,
response.
I just you were basically stating where we are, and I was just going to explain kind of where we are from my perspective, which I think you would want to know.
Yeah, I think we've got it. I think we've.
No, I was just going to say that. So if you are saying, well, we'll consider this in the future, right? That's effectively what you're saying, I think. No? Is that not what you're saying? That you're not going to take a vote tonight, but you're open. I heard the various members of the board. It sounded like they were open to the concept in the future, just not right now. That's what I heard. And what I would say about that is that's your decision, and absolutely you can do that. I respect it, but I will tell you that at some point, things that I have offered, right, in return for the support of the Coolidge building, decisions will ultimately need to be made, and I will make them based on not having an agreement with you. That's all I'm letting you know about.
Yeah, understood. Absolutely
Good.
understood.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I'm good with that.
Yeah, I guess it seems like the general tenor of the board is not to take a vote on anything tonight. Jeff, do you agree with, yeah? And then Paul's off camera, but I think Paul is of that same opinion with his patient's speech. Nope.
I'm here. I'm just getting something to eat, so
Oh,
turn my camera off.
yeah.
Don't go
So I guess I would probably propose that this may end up being a repeat agenda item on, it'll probably end up being on most of our agendas over the next couple of months. I guess it's sort of pending development. Well, hopefully there will be new developments on the various moving pieces, by December and then January and whatnot. So if there's no new developments, then maybe we won't have it as an agenda item, but hopefully we can move closer towards clarity of where everything stands and whether it makes sense to try to hammer out an actual contract or proposal or agreement. Sound good? All right, thank you. I believe that's the last agenda item, so I will entertain a motion relative to the meeting. Paul?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Jeff?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Marion?
Aye.
And I'm aye as well. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
You too.